The blue lights appeared in Claire Hartwell's rear-view mirror at 11:47 p.m. on Highway 54, just outside Meridian Falls. Her 4-year-old son wasn't moving in the back seat anymore. His chest barely rose. She'd served 2 tours as an army medic in Kandahar. She knew what oxygen deprivation looked like on a child's face. 20 minutes to Riverside General, maybe 15 if she pushed it, but Officer Derek Brennan was already walking toward her window, slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. She didn't. "My son needs a hospital," she said, voice cracking. "Right now." He looked past her into the back seat, where Ethan's small body lay unnaturally still. Then he straightened, one hand resting on his belt. "License and registration, ma'am. Before we go further, if this story grabs you, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this has traveled. Hit that like button. You won't believe where this goes." Claire Hartwell had delivered aid under mortar fire. She'd held pressure on severed arteries while transport helicopters circled overhead, rotors thumping against the desert sky. She'd triaged 20 casualties in a field hospital during a sandstorm, making life-or-death calls in seconds. But nothing in Kandahar had prepared her for the particular cruelty of watching a man with a badge take his time while her son died. She kept both hands visible on the steering wheel. Training kicked in even now. Don't escalate. Stay calm. State your case clearly. "Officer, I'm a former combat medic. My son has been unconscious for 8 minutes. His breathing is shallow. I need to get him to Riverside General immediately." Derek Brennan's flashlight beam swept across the back seat again, lingering on Ethan's pale face. The boy's lips had a bluish tint now. Claire's medical training screamed warnings her civilian voice couldn't fully articulate without sounding hysterical. "How fast were you going?" Brennan asked. "I don't know, 70 maybe, please. Speed limit's 55 through here." "I understand. Write me the ticket. I'll pay whatever it costs, but my son—" "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." The words hit her like a slap. Calm down. She was calmer than anyone had a right to be with a dying child 3 feet away. Her voice came out flat, mechanical. "I am calm. I'm asking you to exercise discretion. This is a medical emergency." Brennan's expression didn't change. "I'm going to need your license, registration, and proof of insurance." She fumbled for her wallet, fingers shaking despite her best efforts. The registration was in the glove box. Insurance card tucked behind her license. She handed everything through the window, watching Brennan's face for any sign of humanity, any recognition that seconds mattered. He studied her license with the intensity of someone reading a restaurant menu. "You live in Meridian Falls?" "Yes." "This address current?" "Yes." "Officer, please, my son stopped responding about 10 minutes ago. I'm begging you." "What's wrong with him?" The question should have been a relief. It wasn't. Because the way he asked it, casual, almost bored, told her he was going through motions, not actually processing urgency. High fever that spiked in the last 2 hours. Vomiting. Then he went limp. His breathing's compromised. He needs immediate medical intervention. Brennan glanced at the back seat again. This time, his look lasted maybe 2 seconds. "Did you call 911? I'm 15 minutes from the hospital. Ambulance response time out here is 30 minutes minimum. You know that. So you decided to break traffic laws instead." The flatness in his tone carved something cold into her chest. This wasn't about protocol. This was about power. She'd seen this before, not in Afghanistan, but stateside, in the particular way some people wore authority like a weapon they were looking for an excuse to use. "I made a judgment call," she said carefully, "as a medical professional and as a mother." "Well, ma'am, I'm making a judgment call too, and right now, you're getting a ticket for excessive speed and reckless driving." He tapped her license against his palm. "Sit tight. I'll be back." He walked away. Not quickly. Not with any sense of urgency. Just a steady, unhurried stride back to his patrol car, where he climbed in, closed the door, and sat. Claire twisted in her seat to look at Ethan. His chest was still moving, but barely. She'd seen this progression before, the body shutting down, systems failing one by one. In the field, she would have started an IV, pushed fluids, monitored vitals every 30 seconds. Here, she had nothing. Just a mother's panic wrapped in a medic's clinical knowledge of exactly how bad this was getting. She checked her phone. 11:51 p.m., 4 minutes since Brennan had walked away. Through the rear window, she could see him in his patrol car. He was looking down, writing, maybe, or scrolling through something. The angle of his head suggested he wasn't in any hurry. 5 minutes. She turned on her hazards, thinking maybe the visual would communicate urgency. It didn't change anything. Brennan stayed in his car. Claire's hands found the steering wheel again. Her pulse hammered against her wrists. Every instinct screamed at her to just drive. Floor it. Take the consequences later. Get Ethan to people who could help him. But she'd seen enough traffic stops go wrong to know what happened when someone drove away from a cop. And if Brennan decided to pursue, if he pulled her over again 5 miles down the road, if the delay stretched even longer. 6 minutes. Ethan made a small sound. Not a cry. Something weaker. A whimper that didn't have enough air behind it. "I know, baby," she whispered. "I know. Just hold on. Just a little longer." But how much longer? How long did Brennan need to write a speeding ticket? At 7 minutes, her military discipline cracked. She opened her door and stepped out. Brennan's head snapped up. His hand moved to his belt. "Ma'am, get back in your vehicle." "How much longer?" Her voice carried across the empty highway. "My son is dying." "I said get back in the vehicle. Now. Just tell me how much longer, please. That's all I'm asking." Brennan opened his door and stood. His posture had changed, weight forward, shoulders squared. "This is your last warning. Get back in the car or you'll be placed under arrest for obstruction." The threat hung in the air between them. Claire calculated rapidly. Arrest meant custody. Custody meant Ethan alone in the car. Or worse, both of them detained while her son... She got back in the car. 8 minutes. Through the windshield, she watched Brennan return to his patrol car. He didn't hurry. If anything, he moved slower, like he was making a point. 9 minutes. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor asking if everything was okay. She'd been supposed to pick up Ethan 20 minutes ago, before the fever spiked, before the vomiting started, before everything went to hell. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on Brennan's patrol car. 10 minutes. She'd once kept a Marine alive for 40 minutes with a collapsed lung and no chest tube. She'd talked him through the panic, kept him breathing, kept him conscious through sheer force of will and medical improvisation. But Ethan was 4. He didn't understand what was happening. He couldn't fight to stay conscious. His small body was just shutting down, system by system, while a man in a uniform took his time with paperwork. At 12 minutes, Brennan finally emerged from his patrol car. He had a clipboard. He walked back at the same unhurried pace, boots scuffing against asphalt. Claire gripped the wheel hard enough to hurt. He leaned into her window. "Sign here." She scrawled something that might have been her name. Her handwriting looked nothing like normal, jagged, desperate. Brennan tore off her copy. "This is a citation for traveling 73 in a 55-mile-per-hour zone and a warning for reckless driving. You have 30 days to pay or contest. Court information is on the back." "Can I go now?" "Slow down, ma'am. It's dangerous out here at night." He stepped back. Claire's foot hit the gas before he'd fully cleared her vehicle. The SUV lurched forward, tires finding traction, headlights cutting into the empty darkness ahead. In a rearview mirror, Brennan's silhouette grew smaller. 13 minutes. 13 minutes stolen from her son's chances. The highway stretched out in front of her, empty and dark. She pushed the speedometer to 85. If Brennan wanted to pull her over again, he could try. This time she wouldn't stop. Ethan hadn't made a sound in the last 2 minutes. "Stay with me," she said aloud. "Ethan, baby, stay with me. We're almost there. 5 more minutes. You can do 5 more minutes." The road blurred. She blinked hard, forced her vision clear. Crying could happen later. Right now, she needed to see, needed to drive, needed to get her son to people with equipment and medications and the authority to save him. Riverside General's lights appeared on the horizon at 12:04 a.m. She'd made the drive in under 10 minutes, probably broke every speed limit between the traffic stop and the emergency bay. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the building getting closer. She pulled up to the ER entrance, not bothering with parking, just stopped the car, threw it into park, and yanked open the back door. Ethan was completely unresponsive now. His skin had gone from pale to grayish. His breathing came in tiny, ineffective gasps. She scooped him up. He weighed nothing, felt like air in her arms, and ran through the automatic doors. "I need help. 4-year-old male. Decreased level of consciousness. Respiratory distress." The triage nurse was already moving, calling for a doctor. wheeling a gurney forward. Claire laid Ethan down, started rattling off vitals from memory, Zhengzhuang progression, timeline. Her combat medic voice took over, clinical, precise, emotionless. This wasn't her son. This was a patient. This was a case. This was someone she could save if she just gave them the right information fast enough. A doctor appeared, young but competent looking. When did symptoms start? High fever began around 9 p.m., spiking rapidly. Vomiting started at 10. Loss of consciousness at approximately 11:35. Any known allergies, medical history? No allergies, no significant medical history, up to date on vaccinations. They were already moving, wheeling Ethan through double doors marked authorized personnel only. Claire tried to follow. A nurse caught her arm. "Ma'am, you need to stay here, let them work." "I'm a medic, I can help." "The best thing you can do is let them work." The doors swung shut. Through the small windows, Claire could see bodies moving around Ethan's small form. Organized chaos, the choreography of emergency medicine. She'd been part of that dance so many times. Now she was just an audience member, helpless and excluded. She stood there, still wearing Brennan's citation in her back pocket, still feeling the ghost of her son's weight in her arms. A different nurse approached with a clipboard. "I need some information. What's your son's full name?" "Ethan Michael Hartwell." "Date of birth?" "March 14th, 2020. "And you are?" "Claire Hartwell. I'm his mother." The questions continued. Insurance information, emergency contacts, medical history confirmation. Claire answered automatically. Part of her brain still locked on that closed door, on what was happening behind it, on whether 13 minutes had made the difference between life and death. "Ma'am, is there someone we can call? Someone who can be here with you?" "No, his father's not in the picture. It's just us." The nurse's expression softened. "Okay, the waiting room is right through there. Someone will update you as soon as they know anything." The waiting room was almost empty. An elderly man with a bandaged hand, a young couple, the woman pregnant and looking uncomfortable. Standard fluorescent lighting that made everyone look half dead. Plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A TV mounted in the corner playing news with the sound off. Claire sat, stood, sat again. Her hands wouldn't stay still. She checked her phone. 12:17 a.m., 30 minutes since Brennan had first pulled her over. She pulled out the citation he'd given her, looked at it for the first time. 73 and a 55. $180 fine. His signature at the bottom, neat and careful. Officer D. Brennan, badge number 4127. The paper crumpled in her fist. At 12:45, a doctor emerged through the double doors. Not the young one from before. An older woman, gray hair pulled back, expression professionally neutral in a way that made Claire's stomach drop. "Ms. Hartwell." Claire stood. Her legs felt disconnected from her body. "I'm Dr. Patricia Walsh. I'm the attending physician who treated your son." "Treated? Past tense. We did everything we could. I'm very sorry. Ethan went into cardiac arrest at 12:23. We performed CPR for 18 minutes, but we were unable to revive him. He's gone." The words reached Claire's ears but didn't land. They bounced off, meaningless sounds that couldn't possibly mean what they meant. "No," she heard herself say. "No, that's not. I got him here. I got him here as fast as I could." Dr. Walsh's expression held steady, gentle, but immovable. "From what we can determine, Ethan had developed acute bacterial meningitis. It's extremely aggressive. Even with immediate treatment, the survival rate is..." "How immediate?" The question came out sharp. Dr. Walsh paused. "What do you mean? How immediate does treatment need to be? How much time matters?" Dr. Walsh chose her words carefully. "In cases of acute bacterial meningitis, every minute counts. The infection progresses rapidly. Based on the timeline you gave us and the state Ethan was in when he arrived, I would estimate the infection had been critical for at least 30 to 40 minutes before you reached us." 30 to 40 minutes. Claire's mind did the math automatically. Critical symptoms started around 11:30. She was pulled over at 11:47. Brennan kept her there until 12 o'clock. 13 minutes. "If I'd gotten here 13 minutes earlier," she said slowly, "would it have made a difference?" Dr. Walsh hesitated. That hesitation was an answer in itself. It's impossible to say with certainty. But yes, earlier intervention could potentially have changed the outcome. Bacterial meningitis is one of those conditions where minutes can be the difference between full recovery and fatality. The world tilted. Claire sat down hard, missing the chair at first, catching herself on the armrest. "Can I see him?" "Of course, whenever you're ready." But Claire wasn't ready. Would never be ready. Still, she stood, followed Dr. Walsh through those double doors, down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and death. They'd moved Ethan to a smaller room, quieter. The machines were off. Someone had cleaned him up, arranged him carefully on the bed. He looked asleep. That was the cruelest part. How peaceful he looked. Like he might wake up any second asking for breakfast or his favorite toy. Claire approached slowly. Her hand found his, still small and perfect, already cooling. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I tried so hard." Dr. Walsh stayed near the door, giving her space. Claire didn't know how long she stood there. Time had lost meaning. But eventually, she became aware of Dr. Walsh speaking quietly to someone outside. Then footsteps. A social worker appeared, introduced herself as Monica something, started talking about arrangements, about resources, about grief counseling. The words washed over Claire without sticking. Finally, she turned away from Ethan's body. "I need to make a phone call." They led her to a private room. Monica offered to stay, but Claire shook her head. She needed to be alone for this. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to a number she hadn't called in 2 years. Her former commanding officer, Colonel James Rourke. He'd told her when she left the service that if she ever needed anything, she should call, day or night. It was 1:30 in the morning. She called anyway. He answered on the third ring, voice alert despite the hour. "Hartwell?" "Sir." Her voice cracked on the word. She steadied it. "Sir, I need help." What happened? She told him. All of it. The fever, the drive, the traffic stop, the 13 minutes, the hospital, the outcome. She kept her voice clinical, reporting facts like she was debriefing after a mission. But Rourke had known her for 6 years. He heard what was underneath. "Jesus Christ," he said quietly when she finished. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I need to know if there's anything I can do, legally. This officer, he had the authority to use discretion. He could have let me go. He chose not to. You want to file a complaint? I want him to answer for what he did." Silence on the other end. Then, "Okay, give me 12 hours. I know people. We'll figure out what your options are." "Thank you, sir." "Claire, you holding up?" She looked at the wall. Beige paint, generic landscape print, no character or warmth. "I don't know how to answer that." "That's fair. Call me tomorrow, or later today, I guess. We'll talk through next steps." After they hung up, Claire sat in that small room for another 20 minutes. She should cry, should break down, should feel something other than this hollow, echoing numbness. Instead, she pulled out the citation Brennan had given her, studied it again. Badge number 4127. Meridian Falls Police Department, signed at 12 a.m. She took a photo of it, then she opened her phone's voice recorder and started documenting everything she remembered. Every word Brennan had said, every detail of the stop, timeline, exact quotes, observations. Her military training kicked in again. Document everything, assume nothing, build the case. Because Dr. Walsh had confirmed it. Earlier intervention could have changed the outcome. 13 minutes could have been the difference. Officer Derek Brennan had taken those 13 minutes. Taken them deliberately, with full knowledge that a child was in distress. And now Ethan was dead. Claire's finger hovered over the stop button on her voice recording. She added one more note. This is not over. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, this is not over. She saved the recording, backed it up to cloud storage, and sent a copy to her own email. Then she stood, smoothed down her shirt, and went back to say goodbye to her son one more time. The night that had started with blue lights and a routine traffic stop had ended with a small body on a hospital bed. But something else had started too, something harder than grief, colder than rage. Claire Hartwell had spent 2 tours learning how to fight battles that seemed unwinnable. She'd held ground when everyone said to retreat. She'd saved lives that were supposed to be lost causes. She just lost the most important battle of her life. But the war was just beginning. The funeral home they chose was small, tucked between a hardware store and a tax preparation office on Meridian Falls Main Street. Claire sat across from the director, a soft-spoken man named Gerald, who kept his hands folded on the desk and spoke in the hushed tones people reserved for the newly bereaved. "We offer several package options," he was saying, sliding a laminated price sheet toward her. "The basic service starts at $4,500, which includes—" "Whatever's appropriate for a child," Claire interrupted. She couldn't look at the sheet, couldn't reduce Ethan to line items and cost comparisons. "Just tell me what to sign." Gerald nodded slowly. "Of course. I'll prepare the paperwork. The service, do you have a date in mind?" "Friday?" 3 days away. Enough time to make arrangements. Not enough time to process any of this. "We can do Friday. Morning or afternoon?" "Morning. 10 o'clock. Gerald made a note. "And the burial plot? Have you selected Riverside Cemetery? There's a children's section. I looked yesterday." Yesterday. When she'd driven through the cemetery gates at dawn because she couldn't sleep, couldn't stay in the apartment where Ethan's toys were still scattered across the living room floor. The children's section had small headstones decorated with lambs and angels. She'd hated all of it. Gerald's phone rang. He glanced at it, silenced it, returned his attention to Claire with practiced sympathy. "I know this is difficult. Take all the time you need." But time was the problem. Too much of it stretched ahead, empty and purposeless. And behind her, 13 minutes that could never be reclaimed. She signed the papers Gerald put in front of her. Her signature looked wrong, shaky and unfamiliar. He offered coffee. She declined. He mentioned grief counseling services. She nodded without committing. When she finally left, stepping back into the April sunshine that felt obscene in its normalcy, her phone was ringing. "Rourke. I've got someone for you," he said without preamble. "Attorney out of Pittsburgh, specializes in civil rights violations, police misconduct. Her name's Andrea Galloway. She's expensive, but she's good." Claire leaned against her car. "How expensive?" "She works on contingency for cases she believes in. I sent her your recording. She wants to talk." "When?" "She's driving down tomorrow. Can you meet at 11? "Where?" "There's a diner on Route 9 just outside town. The Bluebird. You know it?" "I'll find it." "Claire?" Rourke's voice shifted, became less official. "How are you doing? Really?" She watched traffic move past, normal people doing normal things, grocery shopping, driving to work, picking up kids from school. The world kept turning like nothing had happened. "I don't sleep," she said. "When I close my eyes, I see him in the back seat. I keep running through it. What I should have said differently, whether I should have just driven past Brennan, whether I should have called 911 earlier, even though I knew the response time. Stop. You did everything right. Everything a reasonable person would do in that situation. Reasonable doesn't matter. Ethan's still dead." Rourke didn't have an answer for that. Nobody did. After they hung up, Claire drove home on autopilot. The apartment felt wrong when she entered. Too quiet. Too still. Ethan's sneakers were by the door where he'd kicked them off 2 days ago. His jacket hung on the hook at his height, the one she'd installed specifically so he could reach it himself. She made it to the bathroom before she threw up. That night, she pulled out her laptop and started researching. Officer Derek Brennan, badge 4127, Meridian Falls Police Department. His name appeared in a few local news articles, community events, traffic safety campaigns, a quote about seatbelt enforcement. Clean record as far as the internet showed. No complaints, no controversies. Just a cop doing his job. She dug deeper. Court records were public. She spent 3 hours navigating county databases, searching for any cases involving Brennan's name. Traffic citations he'd issued, arrests he'd made, complaints filed. Most of it was routine. Speeding tickets, DUIs, one domestic disturbance call. But then she found something that made her pause. A case from 14 months ago. Andrea Simmons versus Officer Derek Brennan and Meridian Falls PD, filed, then dismissed 6 weeks later. No details in the public record, just the case number and the dismissal notice. Claire wrote down the name. Andrea Simmons. Tomorrow, she'd ask Galloway what happened to cases that got dismissed that quickly. The Bluebird Diner looked exactly like its name suggested. faded blue paint, chrome trim, booths with cracked vinyl seats. Claire arrived 10 minutes early and ordered coffee she didn't drink. She was on her third refill when a woman in her mid-40s walked in, scanning the room with the assessing gaze of someone used to reading situations quickly. Andrea Galloway was tall, black, dressed in a sharp gray suit that looked out of place in the diner's greasy spoon atmosphere. She spotted Claire immediately and walked over. "Miss Hartwell?" Claire stood. They shook hands. Galloway's grip was firm, businesslike. "Thank you for coming," Claire said. "I listened to your recording 3 times. Galloway slid into the booth across from her. "I want to be clear about something up front. This isn't a guaranteed win. Police qualified immunity is a high bar to clear, but what happened to you and to your son, that's exactly the kind of case that needs to be fought." A waitress appeared. Galloway ordered black coffee and waved away the menu. "Tell me everything," Galloway said once they were alone again. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small it seems." Claire walked her through it. The timeline, the conversation, Brennan's demeanor. Every detail she could remember. Galloway took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking for clarification. "Did he ever call for medical assistance?" Galloway asked. "No." "Did he ask detailed questions about your son's condition?" "He asked what was wrong with him, once. Then he went back to his car." Galloway made another note. "And you told him you were a medic?" "Former Army medic, yes. I told him right away." "What did he say to that?" "Nothing. He didn't acknowledge it." Galloway tapped her pen against the pad. "Here's what we're dealing with. Qualified immunity protects officers from civil liability unless they violate clearly established constitutional rights. The question becomes, did Officer Brennan have a constitutional duty to render aid or allow you to seek medical care for your son? He had a moral duty. Moral doesn't win in court. We need legal precedent. We need to prove deliberate indifference to a serious medical need. The problem is most cases involve people in custody, prisoners, detainees. Your son wasn't in custody." Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. "So there's no case?" "I didn't say that. I said it's complicated." Galloway leaned forward. "There's a concept called state-created danger. Essentially, if a state actor creates or enhances a danger that leads to harm, they can be held liable. Brennan detained you during a medical emergency. That detention prevented you from getting your son to the hospital. The question is whether a reasonable officer would have known that his actions created a substantial risk of serious harm. He saw Ethan. He saw how bad it was. What exactly did he see? Walk me through his line of sight. What could he observe from his position at your window?" Claire closed her eyes, reconstructing the scene. Ethan was in the back seat, passenger side, not moving. His breathing was shallow. You could see his chest barely rising. His lips had a bluish tint. His eyes were closed. Could Brennan see the blue tint in the dark? My dome light was on. He shined his flashlight directly on Ethan, twice. Galloway made a note. "Good. That's good. Now, did he ever express concern? Ask if you'd called 911? Offer to call for medical assistance himself?" "No, nothing like that." "And when you told him it was an emergency, what were his exact words?" Claire didn't need to check her recording. The words were burned into her memory. He said, "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." "That's it?" Then he asked for my license and registration. Galloway's expression hardened slightly. "Okay, here's what I'm thinking. We file a federal civil rights lawsuit under Section 1983. We argue deliberate indifference and state-created danger. We demand Brennan's personnel file, his training records, his body cam footage. There's body cam footage? All Meridian Falls officers wear them. Department policy. Whether it was turned on, whether it captured everything, that's something we'll need to discover." The possibility of video evidence sent a jolt through Claire. Proof. Not just her word against his, but actual documentation of those 13 minutes. "How long does this take?" she asked. "Months. Maybe a year or more. These cases don't move quickly." "I don't care how long it takes." Galloway studied her for a moment. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. What do you want out of this? Money? An apology? Brennan fired?" Claire didn't hesitate. "I want him to never do this to anyone else." "That's not really an answer. What specifically do you want the outcome to be?" I want people to know what he did. I want it on record. I want him held accountable in a way that means something. Galloway nodded slowly. Okay, I can work with that. But you need to understand, this will get ugly. They'll dig into your life, your service record, your medical history, your finances. They'll look for anything they can use to discredit you, and they'll paint Brennan as a dedicated officer just doing his job. Let them try. They will, and juries are sympathetic to police. We'll be asking civilians to second-guess a cop's split-second decisions. It wasn't split-second, it was 13 minutes. I know, but that's how they'll frame it. We need to be ready. The waitress refilled their coffee. Neither of them touched it. There's something else, Claire said. I found a case. Andrea Simmons versus Brennan and the department, dismissed 14 months ago. Do you know anything about it? Galloway's expression shifted. Not surprise, but recognition. I know of it. Didn't handle it personally. Simmons claimed Brennan used excessive force during a traffic stop. Case was weak. Her attorney wasn't great. They settled before it went anywhere. What kind of settlement? The kind with a non-disclosure agreement, which means I can't tell you details, even if I knew them. But there was a complaint, a credible enough complaint that the department settled. Settlement doesn't mean guilt. Often it just means it's cheaper to pay someone off than fight in court. Claire absorbed that. So this isn't the first time. One prior complaint doesn't establish a pattern. We'd need more. Then we find more. Galloway smiled slightly. It wasn't warm. Now you're thinking like a plaintiff. Okay, here's what happens next. I draft the complaint. We file in federal court. We serve Brennan and the department. Then we start discovery. That's when we get access to records, depositions, evidence. That's when things get interesting. How much do you need from me? Everything you've got. Documentation, medical records from the hospital, the citation Brennan gave you. I'll also need a written statement, more detailed than your recording. We'll go through it together. They spent the next 2 hours doing exactly that. Galloway asked questions Claire had never considered. What was Ethan wearing? How long had Brennan's flashlight beam stayed on him? What was the exact wording when Claire mentioned her medical background? Every detail mattered. Every word could be evidence. When they finally finished, Claire's coffee had gone cold and the lunch rush had come and gone. One more thing, Galloway said, gathering her notes. Don't talk about this case. Not to friends, not to family. Definitely not on social media. Anything you say can be used against you. I understand. Do you? Because I've had clients who understood and still couldn't help themselves. They posted angry rants on Facebook. They talked to reporters. It always comes back to hurt them. I won't talk to anyone. Galloway held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. I'll have the complaint drafted by next week. We'll review it together before filing. After that, all communication goes through me. Don't contact Brennan. Don't contact the department. Don't respond if they reach out to you. When will this be over? I told you, months, maybe longer. Can you handle that? Claire thought about Ethan's funeral in 2 days, about the empty apartment, about the years stretching ahead without him. I don't have anything else to do, she said. After Galloway left, Claire sat in the booth for another 20 minutes. Through the window, she could see the parking lot, the highway beyond it, the ordinary flow of ordinary life. Somewhere out there, Derek Brennan was going about his day, writing tickets, pulling people over, acting like nothing had happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from the funeral home. Final arrangements confirmed for Friday, 10 a.m. She was supposed to select music, she remembered. Gerald had asked about that. Songs Ethan would have liked. Ethan was 4. His favorite song was the theme from a cartoon about talking trains. She paid the check and left. The next 2 days blurred together. People brought food she didn't eat. Her neighbor offered to help with anything she needed. Rourke called twice to check in. Claire went through the motions, answered when spoken to, made the necessary decisions about flowers and programs and who would speak at the service. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Claire dressed in black, ironed her only dress, and drove to the church. The service was small, a handful of her neighbors, a few parents from Ethan's preschool, Rourke in his dress uniform. No one from her family. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, and there was no one else. The pastor spoke about heaven and peace and children being angels. Claire stared at the small casket and felt nothing, just emptiness where feelings should be. Afterward, at the cemetery, they lowered Ethan into the ground. Claire dropped a handful of dirt on the casket like she was supposed to. The sound it made was wrong. Everything was wrong. People left. She stayed. Stood there until the cemetery workers started looking uncomfortable, waiting to finish their job. Finally, Rourke touched her elbow. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you home." "I don't want to go home." "Then we'll go somewhere else. But you can't stay here." She let him guide her to his car. He drove without asking where, just took turns until they ended up at a park on the edge of town. Empty on a Friday afternoon, just trees and grass and a playground with no children. They sat on a bench. Rourke didn't try to fill the silence. "I keep thinking about the Marine," Claire said finally. "In Kandahar. The one with the collapsed lung." Rourke waited. "I kept him alive for 40 minutes with basically nothing. A field kit and pure stubbornness. And he made it. He's probably home right now, living his life because I didn't give up." Her voice cracked. "But I couldn't save my own son." "That wasn't your fault. I had 13 minutes. If you just what? Driven away from a cop? You'd be in jail right now, and Ethan would still—" He stopped himself. "Still be dead," Claire finished. "You can say it. Claire, listen to me. You did everything right. You got him to the hospital as fast as humanly possible under the circumstances. What happened to Ethan? That was the infection. And it was Brennan's choice to delay you. None of that is on you. Dr. Walsh said earlier intervention could have changed the outcome. Could have, not would have. There's no guarantee. But there's a chance. And Brennan took that chance away." Rourke turned to face her. "Is that what this lawsuit is about? Punishing him? It's about accountability. Those aren't the same thing. Aren't they?" He sighed. "I've known you for 6 years. You're one of the toughest people I've ever met. But you're also fair. You follow the rules. You do things by the book. This thing you're doing, going after a cop in civil court, it's going to change you. And I need to know you're ready for that." Claire looked at the playground. Swings moving slightly in the breeze, empty. "I'm already changed," she said. "I buried my son today. There's no going back from that." "That's not what I mean. I mean, revenge is a poison. It feels justified, but it eats you from the inside. This isn't revenge. It's justice." "You sure about that?" She met his eyes. "Are you saying I shouldn't do this?" "I'm saying be careful. Be sure you're doing this for the right reasons. The right reason is making sure he doesn't do this to someone else. And if that's not possible, if he gets qualified immunity and walks away clean, what then?" Claire didn't have an answer. Rourke drove her home eventually. She thanked him for coming, for everything. He made her promise to call if she needed anything. She promised. Inside the apartment, she changed out of the black dress, hung it in the back of her closet where she'd never have to see it again. Then she opened her laptop and checked her email. Galloway had sent a draft of the complaint. 43 pages of legal language detailing what had happened, what laws had been violated, what damages were being sought. Claire read through it twice. It was clinical, precise, stripped of emotion. It reduced Ethan's death to a series of constitutional violations and legal precedents, but it was also the truth. Documented, official, real. She sent her approval. 3 days later, the lawsuit was filed in federal court. Galloway called to confirm. "It's done. Process server is delivering the complaint to Brennan today and to the department's legal counsel. We should get their response in about 30 days. What happens now?" "Now we wait. They'll file a motion to dismiss. We'll oppose it. The judge will rule. If we survive dismissal, we move to discovery." You said if. It's a real possibility. They're going to argue qualified immunity. They're going to say Brennan had no clearly established duty to expedite your traffic stop. The judge might agree. And if the judge does, then it's over. Case dismissed. No trial, no discovery, nothing. Claire felt something cold grip her chest. How likely is that? Honestly, 50-50, maybe worse. These cases are hard for a reason. After they hung up, Claire sat with that knowledge. 50-50 odds that this would end before it even started, that Brennan would walk away untouched, that Ethan's death would just be a tragedy with no accountability attached. She couldn't accept that. She pulled out her laptop again and opened a new search. Andrea Simmons, the woman from the dismissed case. It took an hour of searching through social media and public records, but she finally found a phone number. Galloway had told her not to contact anyone, but Galloway wasn't the one who'd buried a 4-year-old 3 days ago. Claire dialed before she could second-guess herself. The phone rang 4 times, then a cautious female voice. "Hello? Is this Andrea Simmons? Who's asking?" "My name is Claire Hartwell. I'm calling about Officer Derek Brennan." A long pause, then, "I can't talk about that. I signed an NDA. I know, I'm not asking you to break it. I just need to know, was your complaint legitimate? Did he really hurt you?" Another pause. Claire could hear breathing on the other end. "Why are you asking?" "Because he killed my son." The silence stretched longer this time. "It wasn't that simple," Simmons said finally. "The traffic stopped. He pulled me over for a broken taillight. I was 6 months pregnant. I told him I needed to use a bathroom, that I couldn't hold it much longer. He kept me there for 40 minutes. I ended up—" Her voice caught. "I ended up miscarrying 2 days later." Claire's hand tightened on the phone. "Did the doctors say—" "They couldn't prove causation. That's what my lawyer said. Stress can contribute to miscarriage, but you can't prove it was specifically that stress. So we settled. The department paid me $70,000 to go away and shut up." "Did you accept it?" "I had medical bills. I had a mortgage. I couldn't afford to fight a losing battle." Simmons' voice turned bitter. "They told me Brennan had an exemplary record, that I was trying to ruin a good cop's career over a misunderstanding. And maybe they were right. Maybe it was just bad luck and bad timing. Or maybe he has a pattern of using traffic stops as a power trip, and you were just one of his victims." Simmons didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was careful. "If you're suing him, I can't help you. The NDA, I'm not asking for help. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't. But I can't testify. I can't give a statement. I can't do anything that would violate the settlement." "I understand." "Do you? Because if you're going after him, they'll destroy you. They have money and lawyers and a whole system designed to protect them. You're just one person." "I'm one person who has nothing left to lose." Simmons laughed, but it wasn't amused. "That's what I thought too. Until they started digging into my past. Until they made me look like a liar in depositions. Until my own lawyer told me to take the settlement because we'd never win. So yeah, maybe you've got nothing to lose. But they'll make you wish you did." They talked for another 10 minutes. Simmons didn't give details, couldn't because of the NDA. But she confirmed enough. Brennan had a history, the department knew, and they'd chosen to protect him anyway. When Claire finally hung up, she had a decision to make. She could tell Galloway about the conversation, risk the attorney's anger about violating instructions. Or she could keep it to herself, use the information as motivation without it becoming evidence. She chose the latter. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Somewhere across town, Derek Brennan was probably sleeping peacefully. He'd been served with the lawsuit today. Maybe he was worried, maybe he was angry, or maybe he wasn't thinking about it at all. Maybe to him, this was just another part of the job. People got upset, filed complaints. Nothing ever came of it. Claire's phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark. She could call Galloway right now, could tell her to drop the case, could walk away, try to rebuild some kind of life from the pieces. Instead, she got up and walked to Ethan's room. She hadn't been inside since the funeral, hadn't been able to face it. The door creaked when she opened it. The room looked exactly like he'd left it. Toys on the floor, books on the shelf. His bed still unmade from the last time he'd slept in it. She sat on the edge of the bed and picked up his favorite stuffed animal, a worn blue elephant with one ear slightly chewed from when he was teething. "I'm going to make this right," she whispered to the empty room. "I don't know how yet, but I'm not letting him get away with this." The elephant didn't answer. The room stayed silent. But somewhere in the dark, Claire Hartwell felt something harden inside her chest. Something that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with purpose. She stood, turned off the light, and closed the door. In the kitchen, her laptop still glowed with Galloway's email. The complaint filed. The process started. 50-50 odds. Claire had survived worse. She opened a new document and started typing. Everything Simmons had told her, documented while it was fresh. Not evidence, not testimony, just information. A piece of a pattern she was beginning to see. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Officer Brennan. We need to talk." Claire stared at the message for a full minute before she screenshotted it and forwarded it to Galloway with a single line. He contacted me directly. The response came back in under 30 seconds. Do not reply. Do not engage. Forwarding to opposing counsel now. This is a violation. But Claire's finger hovered over the delete button and she didn't press it. Instead, she read the message again. We need to talk. Like they were colleagues, like he had any right to contact her at all. Her phone rang. Galloway. Tell me you didn't respond, the attorney said immediately. I didn't. Good, keep it that way. This is either incredibly stupid on his part or a deliberate attempt to get you to say something incriminating. Either way, it works in our favor. How? Because it shows consciousness of guilt. He's worried. Worried enough to reach out directly despite certainly being told by his attorney not to contact you. That's desperation. Claire looked at the message again. Or arrogance. Maybe he thinks he can convince me to drop this. Let him think whatever he wants. You stay silent. I'll handle this. After hanging up, Claire blocked the number. Then she sat with her laptop, staring at the document she'd started. The notes from her conversation with Andrea Simmons. A pattern. 2 women, 2 traffic stops, 2 emergencies ignored. And those were just the ones she knew about. She opened a new browser tab and started searching. Meridian Falls Police Department complaints. Public records requests. News articles about traffic stops gone wrong. She worked until 3 in the morning, compiling names, dates, case numbers. Most led nowhere, but some opened doors. A man named Robert Torres had filed a complaint 18 months ago. Excessive force during a routine stop. Dismissed after investigation. A woman named Jessica Park had complained about being detained for over an hour for a broken taillight. No formal case, just a complaint logged and closed. 3 others had similar stories buried in local news comment sections, social media posts, scattered mentions that never cohered into anything official. Claire created a spreadsheet. Names, dates, complaint types, outcomes. None of it was smoking gun evidence, but together it sketched something ugly. A cop who used traffic stops as personal power demonstrations, who punished people for minor infractions with deliberate delays and unnecessary escalation. Her phone buzzed again. Different number this time, but she recognized the area code, Meridian Falls. She let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, the voicemail notification appeared. She played it on speaker. Ms. Hartwell, this is Captain Frank Yates with the Meridian Falls Police Department. I'm calling regarding the lawsuit you filed against Officer Brennan and our department. I'd like to discuss this matter with you directly before things escalate further. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. The voice was smooth, reasonable, the tone of someone used to negotiating his way out of problems. Claire deleted the voicemail and added Captain Yates to her blocked contacts. The next morning, she got a call from Galloway. They filed their motion to dismiss, the attorney said, faster than I expected. They're arguing qualified immunity across the board, claiming Brennan had no clearly established constitutional duty to expedite your traffic stop or provide medical assistance. What's our response? I'm drafting it now. We argue state-created danger and deliberate indifference. We cite cases where officers were held liable for failing to act during medical emergencies. But I need to be honest with you. This is the hardest part. If the judge grants their motion, it's over. When will we know? Judge Carolyn Reeves has the case. She's thorough, probably 6 to 8 weeks before we get a ruling. 6 to 8 weeks of waiting. Claire had spent 2 tours in a war zone learning patience, learning to hurry up and wait. This shouldn't feel different, but it did. There's something else, Galloway continued. I got a call from the department's attorney, James Kovac. He mentioned they'd be willing to discuss settlement. Already? It's a tactic. They want to resolve this before discovery. Before we get access to Brennan's personnel file, his training records, any other complaints. They're offering $50,000 and a promise to review departmental policies. Claire's laugh was sharp and humorless. $50,000? That's what they think Ethan's life was worth? It's an opening offer. They expect negotiation. Tell them no. Claire, tell them no. I don't want their money. I want the truth on record. The truth might never come out. If we lose on qualified immunity, then we lose. But I'm not taking a settlement that buries what happened. Galloway was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll inform them you're rejecting their offer. But understand, once we do this, there's no going back. They'll fight dirty. They'll make this personal. It's already personal. 2 days later, the phone calls started. Not to Claire directly. She'd blocked enough numbers that people had stopped trying. But her neighbors started asking questions. Had the police really killed her son? Was she suing because she needed money? Someone had spray-painted "liar" on the dumpster behind her apartment building. Claire scrubbed it off herself at midnight, wearing gloves, using paint thinner she'd bought at the hardware store. The metal was cold under her hands. The chemical smell burned her throat. When she finished, her knuckles were scraped raw, and the word was still faintly visible, ghost letters in the metal. She went back inside and found an envelope that had been slipped under her door. No postage, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a printed message. Drop the lawsuit or things get worse. Claire photographed it, sent it to Galloway, then filed it in a folder with the screenshot of Brennan's text message and the voicemail from Captain Yates. Evidence of harassment, evidence of intimidation, evidence that they were scared. The next morning, she went to the county clerk's office and filed a public records request. She wanted every complaint filed against Derek Brennan in the last 5 years, every internal affairs investigation, every use of force report. The clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, stamped the request without comment. You'll get a response within 30 business days. Might be longer if there's a lot of material. How long if they fight the request? The clerk looked up. They usually don't fight unless there's something to hide. And if they do, then you get a lawyer and go to court. Could take months. Claire nodded. I've got time. She was halfway to her car when someone called her name. She turned to find a man in his 30s holding a camera. Reporter. She could tell from the way he approached, eager but trying to look casual. Miss Hartwell, I'm Travis Mendez with the Meridian Falls Gazette. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about your lawsuit against Officer Brennan. No comment. I understand this is difficult, but the public has a right to know. I said no comment. She got in her car. Mendez didn't follow, but she saw him writing in a notebook. Great. Now the local press was involved. That evening, she got a call from Rourke. I saw the article, he said. What article? Check the Gazette's website. Claire pulled it up on her laptop. There, on the front page. Mother sues police after son's death, claims officer delayed emergency care. The article was surprisingly balanced. It quoted the lawsuit, mentioned Brennan's attorney declining to comment, included a statement from the police department expressing condolences while defending their officer's actions as appropriate. It even quoted Dr. Walsh from Riverside General, saying that earlier treatment could have potentially changed the outcome. But the comments section was a disaster. Anonymous users calling Claire a grieving mother looking for someone to blame. Others defending Brennan as a hero cop being persecuted for doing his job. A few supporting her, but they were drowned out by the vitriol. Don't read the comments, Rourke said, like he could see her scrolling through them. Nothing good ever happens in comment sections. People think I'm making this up. People think a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. Andrea Simmons was right. They're going to make me look like a liar. Then we make sure the truth is louder than their lies. How? Rourke hesitated. I made some calls, talked to people I know from my JAG days. There's a precedent for what we're trying to do. Getting military legal resources involved in civilian cases when a veteran's rights are violated. It's not common, but it's not impossible either. What kind of resources? Legal expertise, research support, maybe even an amicus brief if this goes to trial. The military takes care of its own. Claire felt something loosen in her chest. You do that? I'd do more if I could. Ethan was... His voice caught. He was a good kid. And what happened to him was wrong. Simple as that. After they hung up, Claire returned to her spreadsheet. She'd found 2 more names. Daniel Kim, who'd filed a complaint about a traffic stop where Brennan had allegedly searched his vehicle without consent. Maria Gonzalez, who'd been detained for 45 minutes for rolling through a stop sign. Neither case had gone anywhere. Both complaints had been investigated internally and closed without action. But Claire was starting to see the pattern clearly now. Brennan targeted specific types of people, women, minorities, anyone he perceived as unable to fight back effectively. He used traffic stops as opportunities to exert control, to make people wait, to remind them who had power. and the department had let him do it for years. She was typing up notes on the Gonzalez case when someone knocked on her door. Not a gentle knock. Hard, official, 3 sharp raps that meant authority. Claire looked through the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway. Not Brennan. She didn't recognize either of them. She opened the door but kept the chain on. "Can I help you?" The older of the 2, a sergeant based on his stripes, held up a badge. "Sergeant Tom Mallory, Meridian Falls PD. We need to speak with you about a harassment complaint." "Who filed it?" "Officer Derek Brennan. He claims you've been making threatening phone calls and sending disturbing messages." Claire almost laughed. "That's a lie. I haven't contacted him at all." "Do you have proof of that?" "Do I need proof?" "He's the one making accusations." Mallory's expression didn't change. "We take all harassment complaints seriously. I need to ask you some questions." "Am I being charged with something?" "Not at this time. But if you refuse to cooperate, I have an attorney. All questions go through her." Claire started to close the door. Mallory's hand shot out, blocking it. "Ma'am, I'm trying to do this the easy way. And I'm invoking my right to legal counsel. If you have questions, contact Andrea Galloway at Galloway and Associates in Pittsburgh. Now remove your hand from my door." For a moment, Mallory didn't move. Then he stepped back. "We'll be in touch." "Looking forward to it." She closed the door and immediately called Galloway. "They just tried to interview me about a harassment complaint Brennan filed, claiming I've been calling and messaging him." "That's absurd. You blocked his number. You have proof of that." "I know, but they showed up at my door, 2 cops trying to intimidate me." "Did you say anything?" "I told them to contact you, then I shut the door." "Perfect. This is harassment, pure and simple. They're trying to scare you into dropping the lawsuit. I'm going to file a complaint with their internal affairs and send a cease and desist to the department. This ends now." But it didn't end. Over the next 2 weeks, Claire got pulled over 3 times for minor traffic violations, failure to signal, tinted windows allegedly too dark, following too closely. Different officers each time, all from Meridian Falls PD, none of them Brennan. Each stop took at least 30 minutes. Each resulted in a warning, not a citation. Each felt like a message. "We can make your life difficult whenever we want." Claire documented everything: times, dates, officer names, badge numbers. She bought a dash cam and installed it herself. Every interaction was now recorded. Galloway filed a motion for a protective order, arguing that the department was engaging in retaliatory harassment. The judge granted a temporary order prohibiting any contact between Claire and Meridian Falls PD unless there was probable cause for an arrest. The traffic stop stopped immediately, but the damage was done. Claire's apartment lease was up for renewal, and her landlord informed her they wouldn't be renewing, no explanation given. Just a polite letter saying they were going in a different direction. She had 60 days to find a new place. Rourke offered to let her stay with him. She declined. She wasn't running. She found a smaller apartment on the other side of town, farther from Meridian Falls, closer to nothing in particular. The rent was higher, the neighborhood was worse, but the landlord didn't ask questions. She moved on a Saturday in May, 3 months after Ethan's death. Everything she owned fit in a rental truck. There wasn't much. Most of Ethan's things she'd packed away in boxes she couldn't bear to open. His toys, his clothes, his books, all sealed up and stacked in the new apartment's closet, out of sight. The new place was quiet. No neighbors stopping by with casseroles. No one who knew her story, just anonymous urban isolation. She unpacked the essentials and left the rest in boxes. It didn't feel like home. Nothing had felt like home since the night Brennan's lights appeared in her rearview mirror. In early June, Galloway called with news. Judge Reeves denied the motion to dismiss. Claire's hand tightened on the phone. "We're going to trial?" "Not yet. But we survived the first hurdle. Reeves found sufficient evidence of state-created danger to allow the case to proceed to discovery. We can now subpoena Brennan's records, depose witnesses, build our case." "When does that start?" "Next week. I'm filing discovery requests today. We're asking for everything: personnel files, training records, disciplinary history, body cam footage, dispatch logs. They'll fight us on some of it, but Reeves has already indicated she's inclined to allow broad discovery." "What about the body cam footage from that night?" Galloway paused. "That's interesting. The department claims the footage was corrupted, technical malfunction." "Convenient. Very. but we're filing a motion to compel forensic examination of the device. If they deleted footage, we'll find out. Claire absorbed this. Corrupted footage meant no visual evidence of those 13 minutes. No proof of Ethan's condition, no documentation of Brennan's indifference, just her word against his. What about other cases? She asked. Other complaints against Brennan? We're requesting those too. If there's a pattern of behavior, it's relevant to our case. And if the department refuses? Then we go back to the judge. Discovery is a process. They'll resist. We'll push. Eventually we get what we need. 2 weeks later, the department produced the first batch of documents. Heavily redacted. Names blacked out. Dates obscured. Context removed. Useless. Galloway filed a motion to compel production of unredacted documents. The department's attorney argued privacy concerns, officer safety, ongoing investigations. Judge Reeves scheduled a hearing. Claire sat in the courtroom gallery, watching attorneys argue over what she could and couldn't see. Brennan was there, sitting with his attorney. He looked exactly like he had that night, calm, controlled, utterly unbothered. He glanced back once, met her eyes, and looked away. The judge ruled that most documents would be produced in unredacted form, with limited exceptions for truly sensitive information. The department had 30 days to comply. Walking out of the courthouse, Claire felt someone watching her. She turned to find Brennan standing by the entrance, alone. They looked at each other across the courthouse steps. He didn't approach, didn't speak, just stood there, expressionless. Claire held his gaze for a long moment, then she turned and walked away. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Brennan's face, the complete absence of remorse, the cold calculation in his eyes. At 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and opened her laptop. The spreadsheet of complaints had grown. She now had 12 names, 12 people who'd filed complaints against Derek Brennan over the past 5 years. Not all of them were about delays or medical emergencies, but all of them shared a common thread: excessive use of authority during routine traffic stops. She'd managed to contact 6 of them. 2 didn't want to talk. 3 confirmed their complaints but said they'd moved on, didn't want to get involved in legal proceedings. 1, Robert Torres, the excessive force case, agreed to speak with Galloway. His deposition was scheduled for late July. The unredacted documents arrived in mid-July. Galloway called Claire into her office to review them together. Brennan's personnel file is interesting, the attorney said, spreading papers across the conference table. He's had 16 complaints filed against him in 5 years. 16. And every single one was investigated internally and dismissed. How is that possible? Because the people investigating him were his colleagues. Internal affairs in a small department is a joke. They protect their own. Claire leaned over the documents. Complaint summaries, investigation notes, witness statements, all of it carefully documented, all of it leading to the same conclusion. Officer Brennan's actions were within policy guidelines. What about his training? She asked. Galloway pulled out another file. Standard academy training, no specialized medical response training, no crisis intervention certification. But here's the thing, department policy does require officers to request medical assistance when a civilian reports a medical emergency. Did Brennan follow that policy? According to the dispatch logs from that night, he never called in your emergency, never requested an ambulance, never informed dispatch that there was a child in medical distress. Claire felt her pulse quicken. That's a policy violation. It is. And it's documented. They can't claim he followed proper procedure when the logs prove he didn't. So why wasn't he disciplined? Galloway's expression hardened. Because no one looked. The department didn't investigate the stop until after you filed your lawsuit. By then, they had a narrative to protect. What about the bodycam footage? Still waiting on the forensic analysis, but I'm not optimistic. If they deleted it, they did it professionally. Claire stared at the document spread across the table. 16 complaints, 16 dismissals. A pattern so obvious it felt intentional. There's something else, Galloway said. She pulled out a stapled document. Brennan's supervisor evaluations. Every year he's rated as meets expectations or exceeds expectations. No disciplinary notes, no concerns raised. According to this, he's a model officer. Who writes these evaluations? His direct supervisor, Sergeant Tom Mallory. The name clicked. The same sergeant who came to my door trying to question me about harassment. The same one. Claire looked at Galloway. They're protecting him, the whole department. Welcome to institutional corruption. It's not dramatic. It's not a conspiracy. It's just people covering for each other because that's easier than holding anyone accountable. Over the next month, more evidence emerged. Dispatch logs showed a pattern of Brennan taking unusually long times to process routine traffic stops. Internal emails revealed that other officers had privately complained about his conduct, but nothing had been done officially. And then Torres gave his deposition. Claire wasn't allowed to attend. Galloway said it would be too prejudicial, but the attorney called her immediately after. Torres testified that Brennan pulled him over for a broken taillight. During the stop, Brennan claimed to smell marijuana and demanded to search the vehicle. Torres refused. Brennan detained him for 90 minutes, eventually calling in a K9 unit. The dog alerted, but the subsequent search found nothing. Torres filed a complaint alleging an illegal detention and false positive from the K9. What happened? Complaint dismissed. Internal Affairs concluded that Brennan acted appropriately given his suspicions. 90 minutes for a broken taillight. And here's the thing, Torres is a lawyer. He knew his rights. He documented everything. He fought back. And he still lost. Claire felt the weight of it settling over her. So what chance do I have? You have something Torres didn't. You have a dead child. That's not strategy. It's just reality. Juries don't like cops who ignore medical emergencies involving children. If we can get this in front of a jury, we have a shot. If, Galloway agreed. The department is pushing hard for summary judgment. They're arguing that even with all this evidence, Brennan's actions don't rise to the level of a constitutional violation. We've got a hearing in 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks crawled by. Claire went to work. She'd taken a job as a trauma nurse at County Medical, using her military credentials to skip most of the civilian certification process. The work was hard, the hours long, but it kept her mind occupied. Late shifts were best. She'd come home exhausted, too tired to think about the lawsuit or the hearing or what would happen if they lost. But on the night before the hearing, she couldn't sleep at all. She sat in her living room, surrounded by boxes she still hadn't unpacked, and thought about Ethan, about the life he'd never get to live, about the injustice of a 4-year-old dying while the man responsible slept peacefully across town. Her phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice, distorted like it was being run through a modifier. Drop the lawsuit. Last warning. The line went dead. Claire stared at the phone. Then she called Galloway and left a voicemail reporting the threat. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Claire arrived early, wearing the same black dress she'd worn to Ethan's funeral. It was the only formal thing she owned. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Judge Reeves sat at the bench, reading through documents. Brennan sat with his attorney and a representative from the police union. The department had sent their lawyer, Kovac, and Captain Yates in uniform. Galloway presented their case methodically. The dispatch logs, the personnel file, Torres's deposition, the pattern of complaints. She argued that taken together, the evidence showed deliberate indifference to a medical emergency and a pattern of constitutional violations. Kovac countered that Brennan had followed standard procedure, that he had no way of knowing the severity of Ethan's condition, that Claire had been speeding dangerously and needed to be stopped. The tragic outcomes didn't equal constitutional violations. Judge Reeves listened without expression. When both sides finished, she spoke. I'll take this under advisement. You'll have my ruling within 2 weeks. Claire left the courtroom feeling hollow. 2 more weeks of waiting. She was halfway to her car when she heard footsteps behind her. Miss Hartwell? She turned. Captain Yates stood there, hands in his pockets, trying to look casual. You should reconsider settlement, he said quietly. This doesn't have to keep going. Your officer killed my son. That's not what happened. A sick child died despite everyone's best efforts. It's tragic, but it's not actionable. 13 minutes, Claire said. That's how long he kept me. 13 minutes that could have saved Ethan's life. Or maybe 13 minutes wouldn't have mattered. Maybe your son was already too sick. You're looking for someone to blame, and I understand that. But destroying a good cop's career won't bring your boy back. Claire stepped closer. Good cops don't have 16 complaints against them. Good cops don't ignore dying children. Good cops don't threaten witnesses. Yates's expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. The phone call last night, The anonymous threat. You think I don't know where that came from? I think you're under a lot of stress. I think grief does strange things to people. I think you should take the settlement offer before this gets worse for you. Is that a threat? It's advice. From someone who's seen how these things end. He walked away before she could respond. Claire stood in the parking lot, shaking with anger. Then she pulled out her phone and called Galloway. Yates just approached me outside the courthouse, made thinly veiled threats about what would happen if I don't settle. Did anyone witness this? No, just him and me, Galloway swore softly. Okay. Document everything you remember. Exact words, time, location. We'll add it to the pile. The pile of what? Evidence that won't matter? Claire, no. I'm tired of documenting. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of being told to trust the process while they threaten me with impunity. I know, but right now the process is all we have. Claire ended the call and sat in her car. She thought about Yates's words, about the settlement offer still technically on the table, about the possibility that none of this would matter, that Brennan would walk away clean, that Ethan's death would just be another tragedy with no accountability attached. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number, different from last night's call. Check your email. She opened her email app. New message from an address she didn't recognize. No subject line, just an attachment. She hesitated, then opened it. It was a video file. Bodycam footage. She hit play. The screen showed a dark highway, a patrol car dashboard, and then flashing lights, an SUV pulling over. Claire's heart stopped. It was Brennan's bodycam. The footage they'd claimed was corrupted. Someone had just sent her the evidence that wasn't supposed to exist. Claire sat in her car with the phone screen illuminated, watching the footage play. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., the exact moment Brennan had pulled her over. The angle was from his chest-mounted camera, slightly tilted, showing the approach to her vehicle. His boots crunched on gravel. The flashlight beam swept across her back window, lingering on Ethan's motionless form. The camera captured it clearly, a small child slumped in a car seat, head lolled to one side, skin visibly pale even in the poor lighting. Then Claire's voice, thin with panic. My son needs a hospital, right now. Brennan's response was exactly as she remembered. License and registration, ma'am. But what the camera captured next made Claire's hands shake. After Brennan walked back to his patrol car, the body cam kept recording. It shouldn't have. Standard procedure was to turn it off during administrative tasks, but either he'd forgotten or the camera had malfunctioned in the other direction. The footage showed Brennan sitting in his driver's seat, not writing, not running her information, just scrolling through his phone. She could see the glow of the screen reflected on his face. At one point, he took a drink from a coffee cup, checked his watch, scrolled some more. 8 minutes of him doing nothing. Then he finally picked up his clipboard and started writing, slowly, deliberately. Another 5 minutes before he emerged from the vehicle. The video ended at the 13:47 mark. 13 minutes total. 13 minutes of documented negligence. Claire's hands trembled as she forwarded the video to Galloway with a message. Anonymous source just sent this. Brennan's body cam footage from that night. Watch all of it. The response came back within seconds. Do not share this with anyone else. I'm calling you now. The phone rang. Claire answered. Where did you get this? Galloway's voice was sharp, urgent. Someone emailed it anonymously. I don't know who. This is either the best evidence we could hope for or a trap. Possibly both. I need to verify its authenticity before we can use it. If this was obtained illegally, does it matter how we got it if it's real? Yes. If this was stolen or hacked, it's inadmissible. Worse, we could be charged with evidence tampering. I need to approach this carefully. But you saw it. You saw what he did. I saw it. And if it's authentic and admissible, it's devastating for their case. But I need you to not get your hopes up yet. Let me work on this. After they hung up, Claire sat in the parking lot and watched the video again and again. Each viewing made the rage burn hotter, the casual indifference, the phone scrolling while her son died, the deliberate delay. She wanted to drive to Brennan's house right now, wanted to make him watch this footage, wanted to see his face when he realized his lies were about to unravel. Instead, she started her car and drove home. That night, She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Brennan's face illuminated by his phone screen, scrolling while Ethan struggled to breathe 300 feet away. At 6 a.m., Galloway called. "I spent all night on this." Called in favors with a digital forensics expert. He examined the metadata. The video is genuine. It came from Brennan's issued Bodycam, recorded the night Ethan died. Someone pulled it from the department's evidence storage server. So it's real. It's real. But here's the problem. It was accessed illegally. Someone inside the department leaked it. That makes it fruit of the poisonous tree. Inadmissible. In court. Claire's stomach dropped. "You're saying we can't use it?" "I'm saying we can't use it directly, but we can use it as a roadmap. We file a motion to compel the department to produce Brennan's body cam footage. They'll claim it's corrupted. We argue that we have reason to believe functional footage exists. The judge orders a forensic examination of the storage server. And when that examination finds this exact video, it becomes legitimate evidence." Exactly. We forced them to produce what they were trying to hide. The leak just gave us the ammunition to know what to ask for. How long will that take? I'm filing the motion today. Emergency hearing. If the judge grants it, we could have official access within a week. Claire drove to work feeling something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not certainty. Not even confidence. Just the possibility that justice might actually happen. Her shift at County Medical was brutal. 3 MV as. A cardiac arrest. A domestic violence victim who coded twice before they stabilized her. Claire worked on autopilot, her hands doing what her training demanded while her mind stayed locked on that video footage. During her break, she checked her phone. Message from Galloway. "Hearing scheduled for tomorrow 2 p.m. Judge Reeves is taking this seriously." The next day, Claire sat in the same courtroom gallery. Brennan was there again, looking less composed than before. Kovac, the department's attorney, wore an expression of barely controlled anger. Galloway stood. "Your Honor, we have credible evidence that body cam footage from the night of April 18th exists and is functional, contrary to the department's previous representations. We request an immediate forensic examination of their evidence storage system." Kovac shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a fishing expedition based on unfounded allegations. The department has already stated that Officer Brennan's body cam malfunctioned that night. Then a forensic examination will confirm that," Judge Reeves interrupted. "Ms. Galloway, what's the basis for your belief that footage exists?" "We've received information from a confidential source that functional footage was stored on the department's server. We're not at liberty to disclose the source, but we have sufficient reason to believe this claim is credible." Reeves looked at Kovac. "Do you oppose a forensic examination?" Kovac hesitated. It was only a second, but Claire saw it. So did the judge. "We oppose it on the grounds that it's overly broad and invasive of department security protocols." "I'm ordering the examination," Reeves said flatly. "The department will provide full access to their evidence storage system. A neutral forensic expert will be appointed by the court. If footage exists, it will be produced. If it doesn't, that will be confirmed. We'll reconvene in 1 week for the results." Kovac tried to argue. Reeves shut him down. Claire walked out of the courthouse with Galloway. "They're panicking," the attorney said quietly. "Did you see Kovac's face? He knows the footage exists, and now he knows we know. What happens when they try to delete it? That's why Reeves appointed a neutral expert immediately. The department has been ordered to preserve all evidence as of right now. If they delete anything at this point, it's destruction of evidence, criminal charges." "You think they'll risk it?" Galloway's smile was cold. "I think they're weighing their options, and I think they're realizing they're out of good ones." The next 3 days were tense. Claire worked her shifts, came home to her empty apartment, and waited. She'd stopped checking the news, stopped reading comment sections. None of that mattered anymore. Only the evidence mattered. On the 4th day, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Claire Hartwell?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "My name is Marcus Webb. I'm a detective with the state police. I'd like to talk to you about your lawsuit against Officer Brennan." Claire's pulse quickened. "Why is state police involved?" "Because someone leaked evidence from a police department server. That's a felony. I'm investigating. I'd like to ask you some questions." "Am I a suspect?" "I'd just like to talk." "Then talk to my attorney, Andrea Galloway in Pittsburgh. I'm sure you can find her number." She hung up and immediately called Galloway. State police just contacted me. Detective named Marcus Webb said he's investigating the leak. Did you talk to him? I referred him to you. Good. This is expected. They're trying to scare whoever leaked the footage, probably trying to scare you too in case you know who it was. Don't engage, let me handle it. 2 days later, the forensic report came back. Galloway called Claire at work. They found it. The footage exists on the server exactly where it should be, time-stamped, metadata intact. The department's claim of corruption was a lie. What happens now? Emergency hearing tomorrow. The judge is going to want an explanation for why the department claimed the footage didn't exist. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Word had gotten out somehow, maybe the Gazette, maybe social media. Claire sat in the front row and watched Kovac try to mount a defense. Your Honor, there was a misunderstanding. The footage was marked as corrupted in the system due to an administrative error. An administrative error that lasted 6 months? Reeves's voice could have cut glass. During which time you repeatedly told this court that no footage existed? We relied on the initial assessment from our IT department. Where's that IT assessment? Produce it. Kovac couldn't, because it didn't exist. Reeves ordered the footage to be submitted into evidence immediately. Then she did something Claire hadn't expected. I'm also ordering an investigation into whether the department engaged in spoliation of evidence. This will be referred to the State Attorney General's office. Kovac went pale. Additionally, I'm denying the department's motion for summary judgment. This case will proceed to trial. Jury selection begins in 60 days. Claire felt her knees go weak. They'd won. Not the case. Not yet. But they'd won the right to present their evidence to a jury. The footage would be seen. The truth would be told. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Claire pushed through them without comment. Galloway handled the press, professional, measured, devastating in her calm recitation of facts. That night, the Gazette's headline read, Police Department accused of evidence tampering in traffic stop death case. The story went regional, then national. News crews started showing up in Meridian Falls. Officer Derek Brennan became a name people recognized, and then the other victims started coming forward. Jessica Park, who'd been detained for an hour over a broken taillight, called Galloway's office. She was ready to testify. Daniel Kim, whose car had been illegally searched, reached out through social media. He'd kept every document from his complaint. He wanted to help. Andrea Simmons sent an email. Short and direct. My NDA has a clause about illegal conduct. If Brennan committed crimes, I can talk. Let me know what you need. Within a week, Galloway had depositions scheduled with 7 different people, all with similar stories, all painting the same picture of an officer who used traffic stops as personal power trips. But the real break came from inside the department. An officer named Luis Cordero, 10-year veteran, requested to speak with Galloway off the record. They met in a coffee shop 2 towns over. Claire wasn't there. Cordero had insisted on speaking only to the attorney, but Galloway called her immediately after. Cordero witnessed something the night Ethan died. He was on patrol in the area. He heard Brennan's initial stop over the radio. He drove past about 5 minutes later and saw your car still there. He radioed Brennan to ask if he needed backup. Brennan said no, everything was fine, just a routine speeding ticket. So Brennan lied to another officer. He lied to another officer about a medical emergency. Cordero is willing to testify. He's also willing to testify about department culture, how complaints against Brennan were routinely dismissed, how Mallory protected him, how everyone knew Brennan had issues but no one did anything. Why is he coming forward now? Because he's retiring in 3 months and he's tired of being part of a corrupt system. His words, not mine. The department tried to stop Cordero. They offered him a promotion if he'd reconsider his retirement. They implied his pension could be affected. They assigned him to desk duty and started an internal investigation into unspecified misconduct. Cordero hired his own attorney and filed a whistleblower complaint. The pressure kept building. Captain Yates gave a press conference defending Brennan and the department. It went poorly. A reporter asked about the 16 previous complaints. Yates claimed they were all thoroughly investigated and found baseless. Another reporter asked why the bodycam footage had been hidden. Yates had no good answer. The video went viral. Clips of Yates stumbling through questions, looking defensive and dishonest, played on local news and social media. The mayor of Meridian Falls called for an independent review of the police department. The state attorney general announced a formal investigation into evidence tampering. And through it all, Derek Brennan remained on active duty, suspended with pay, but still collecting a salary, still wearing the badge. Until the day the Bodycam footage leaked online. Claire was at work when it happened. Someone, the same anonymous source she assumed, uploaded Brennan's Bodycam video to YouTube. All 13 minutes. Unedited. Within hours, it had 500,000 views. By the next morning, it was national news. The footage was everything Claire had described and worse. The casual indifference was visible in every frame. Brennan's complete lack of urgency. The phone scrolling, the coffee break. And most damning, the moment he walked back to Claire's window and handed her the ticket with an almost bored expression while her son lay dying behind her. The comment sections were brutal. People calling for Brennan's arrest, demanding he be fired, threatening violence. The department's Facebook page was flooded with thousands of angry messages. The mayor held another press conference. This time, Brennan was suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the trial and the attorney general's investigation. It wasn't enough for most people, but it was something, Galloway called that evening. We need to talk strategy. The footage leak complicates things. Defense is going to argue pre-trial publicity makes a fair trial impossible. They might request a change of venue. Can they do that? They can request it. Whether the judge grants it depends on whether they can prove the jury pool is irredeemably biased. The whole country has seen that video, which is why we need to be careful. No public statements, no interviews. We let the evidence speak for itself. But 2 days later, Claire got a call from a producer at a national news program. They wanted to interview her, tell her story, show the world what had happened. She asked Galloway, "Absolutely not. You go on TV now, you become a media personality instead of a plaintiff. The defense will use it against you, claim you're seeking attention, trying to influence public opinion, turning this into a circus. We stay quiet." Claire agreed. But watching other people tell her story, watching talking heads debate whether Brennan had acted appropriately, watching the footage analyzed frame by frame on cable news, it was torture. She wanted to scream at all of them that they didn't understand. That watching your child die while someone with power chooses not to help isn't a policy debate or a legal question. It's just evil. But she stayed silent. The trial date approached. Jury selection began in late September, 5 months after Ethan's death. The courtroom was packed with reporters, activists, curious onlookers. Claire sat at the plaintiff's table next to Galloway, wearing a simple navy dress. Across the aisle, Brennan sat in a suit instead of his uniform, looking smaller somehow without the badge and gun. Jury selection took 3 days. Galloway dismissed anyone who expressed pro-police bias. Brennan's attorney, a high-priced defense lawyer named Richard Hartman brought in from a big firm in Philadelphia, dismissed anyone who'd seen the video and admitted it affected their view. They ended up with 12 jurors who swore they could be impartial. Claire wasn't sure such people existed anymore. Opening statements were straightforward. Galloway presented the facts, the traffic stop, the delay, the death, the cover-up. She showed the jury the timeline, explained that 13 minutes could have meant the difference between life and death. Hartman painted Claire as a grieving mother looking for someone to blame. He acknowledged the tragedy, but argued that Brennan had followed standard procedure, that he couldn't have known how serious Ethan's condition was, that tragic outcomes don't equal criminal liability. Then the evidence phase began. Dr. Walsh testified first. She explained bacterial meningitis, how it progresses, why early intervention matters. Under cross-examination, Hartman got her to admit that even with immediate treatment, survival wasn't guaranteed. But earlier treatment would have improved his chances? Galloway asked on redirect. Yes. Every minute matters with bacterial meningitis. In your medical opinion, if Ethan had arrived at the hospital 13 minutes earlier, would that have potentially changed the outcome? In my medical opinion, yes. It could have been the difference between survival and death. Cordero testified next. He described the radio call, the patrol area, the fact that Brennan had reported everything as routine when there was nothing routine about a dying child in the back seat. Did you see the child? Hartman asked. No, I didn't approach the vehicle. So you have no first-hand knowledge of his condition? No. And Officer Brennan told you it was routine? Yes. So as far as you knew, he was handling the situation appropriately? Cordero hesitated. At the time, yes. Hartman sat down, looking satisfied. But on redirect, Galloway asked one question. Officer Cordero, having now seen the body cam footage and knowing what you know now, do you believe Officer Brennan was handling the situation appropriately? No, he should have called for medical assistance immediately. The strongest testimony came from Claire herself. Galloway walked her through every detail. The fever, the vomiting, the decision to drive to the hospital, the moment she saw the blue lights, the conversation with Brennan, the 13-minute wait, the desperate drive, the moment Dr. Walsh told her Ethan was gone. Claire kept her voice steady. She'd practiced this. Knew that breaking down would make her seem emotional and unreliable. The facts were damning enough without theatrics. Hartman's cross-examination was brutal. Ms. Hartwell, you were speeding, correct? Yes. 18 miles over the limit? I don't know exactly. Around that. So you were breaking the law? My son was dying. But you were breaking the law, yes or no? Yes. And Officer Brennan's job is to enforce the law, correct? His job is also to use discretion. Yes or no, Ms. Hartwell? Is it a police officer's job to enforce the law? Yes. And you admit you were breaking the law? Yes. Hartman smiled. No further questions. Galloway stood for redirect. Ms. Hartwell, when you informed Officer Brennan that your son was having a medical emergency, what did you expect him to do? I expected him to let me go, or call an ambulance, or do something to help. And what did he do instead? He gave me a ticket and told me to slow down. The body cam footage was played for the jury on day 4 of the trial. 13 minutes of silence in the courtroom as everyone watched Brennan scroll through his phone while a child died. 2 jurors cried. 3 others looked visibly angry. Brennan stared at the table in front of him. When the video ended, Galloway asked Claire one final question. Ms. Hartwell, in those 13 minutes, did Officer Brennan ever ask if you needed medical assistance? No. Did he ever call for an ambulance? No. Did he express any concern for your son's welfare? No. What did he do? Claire looked directly at the jury. He sat in his car and scrolled through his phone while my son died. The defense called Brennan to the stand the next day. He wore his uniform this time, Hartman's choice, clearly trying to remind the jury he was a cop, not a defendant. Brennan testified that he'd followed protocol, that the lighting was poor, that he couldn't adequately assess the child's condition, that Claire had been speeding dangerously and needed to be stopped. Did you see the child in the back seat? Hartman asked. Briefly, he appeared to be sleeping. Did Ms. Hartwell tell you the child was unconscious? She said he wasn't responding. I wasn't sure what that meant. Did she identify herself as a medical professional? She mentioned something about being a medic. I didn't know if she meant military or civilian or what. It was smooth, practiced. Almost believable if you hadn't seen the video. Galloway's cross-examination destroyed him. Officer Brennan, how long have you been a police officer? 12 years. In those 12 years, how many traffic stops have you conducted? Thousands. And in those thousands of stops, when someone tells you there's a medical emergency, what's the standard procedure? It depends on the circumstances. Does standard procedure include sitting in your patrol car scrolling through your phone? So, Hartman objected. Reeves overruled. I was checking the dispatch system, Brennan said. For 8 minutes? I was also writing the citation. Writing a citation takes 8 minutes? Sometimes. Galloway pulled out a document. This is your average traffic stop duration for the past year, compiled from department data. Your average stop is 11 minutes. The night you stopped Ms. Hartwell was 13 minutes. Why did this stop take longer than average if it was routine? Brennan didn't have a good answer. Officer Brennan, when you shined your flashlight on the child in the back seat, what did you observe? A child sleeping. Did you notice his skin color? It was dark. Your flashlight was on. The dome light was on. You had adequate visibility. Did you notice his skin was pale? I don't recall. Did you notice his breathing was shallow? I didn't observe his breathing. You didn't observe the breathing of a child who the mother just told you was unresponsive? It was a quick glance. 2 glances, according to your body cam. Once when you approached, once when you returned to give Ms. Hartwell her citation. 2 opportunities to assess the situation, and both times you chose not to render assistance. Why? I didn't believe assistance was necessary. You didn't believe a 4-year-old child who was unconscious and unresponsive needed assistance? I didn't realize he was unconscious. Ms. Hartwell told you he wasn't responding. What did you think that meant? Brennan didn't answer. Officer Brennan, did you at any point during that 13-minute stop call for medical assistance? No. Did you ask Ms. Hartwell if she'd called 911? No. Did you offer to call an ambulance yourself? No. Did you do anything to help that child? I processed the traffic stop according to procedure. That wasn't the question. Did you do anything to help Ethan Hartwell? A long pause. No. Galloway let that answer hang in the air. Then she sat down. Closing arguments happened on day 7. Hartman argued procedure, qualified immunity, the tragic unpredictability of bacterial meningitis. He asked the jury not to punish a good cop for a bad outcome. Galloway showed them the timeline one more time. The 13 minutes, the phone scrolling, the indifference. She asked them to hold someone accountable when that person chose power over compassion. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the forewoman read the verdict. In the matter of Hartwell versus Brennan, we find in favor of the plaintiff. We award compensatory damages in the amount of $2.4 million. We award punitive damages in the amount of $7.5 million. The courtroom erupted. Claire sat motionless, staring at the jury box. $9.9 million. It wouldn't bring Ethan back, but it meant something. It meant accountability. It meant Brennan would pay for what he'd done. But the forewoman wasn't finished. We also find that Officer Derek Brennan acted with deliberate indifference to a medical emergency, violated clearly established constitutional rights, and engaged in willful misconduct. We recommend criminal charges be pursued. Now Claire's hands started to shake. Brennan's face had gone white. Hartman was already whispering urgently to him. Judge Reeves thanked the jury and dismissed them. Then she looked at Brennan. Officer Brennan, based on this verdict and the evidence presented, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney for criminal prosecution. Additionally, I am recommending to the State Police Certification Board that your law enforcement credentials be permanently revoked. She banged her gavel. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed Claire. This time, Galloway let her speak. My son died because someone with authority chose not to help him, Claire said into the cameras. Today, a jury decided that was wrong. I hope this means the next mother who begs for help won't be ignored. The questions came rapid fire. She answered a few, then Galloway guided her away. They walked to Galloway's car in silence. Only when they were inside with the doors closed did Claire finally break. She didn't sob, didn't wail, just sat with her face in her hands while tears ran through her fingers. We won, Galloway said quietly. I know. You did this. You stood up when everyone told you to sit down. You fought when they said you'd lose. You won. Claire looked up. He's still dead. Ethan's still dead, and all of this won't bring him back. No, but maybe it saves the next kid. Maybe it makes the next cop think twice. Maybe it changes something. Claire wiped her eyes. Maybe. They drove in silence for a while. Then Galloway's phone rang. She put it on speaker. Ms. Galloway, this is Assistant District Attorney Michael Reeves. I'm calling regarding the Brennan case. We've reviewed the trial transcript and evidence. We'll be filing criminal charges, manslaughter, and official misconduct. I wanted to inform you before it becomes public. Galloway looked at Claire. When? Tomorrow morning. We're also investigating the evidence tampering issue. Several people in the department may face charges. After the call ended, Claire asked, what are the chances he goes to prison? Criminal cases have a higher burden of proof, but with the body cam footage and the civil verdict, I'd say it's likely. Not certain, but likely. That night, Claire returned to her apartment. It still felt empty. It would always feel empty. But on her kitchen table, next to the framed photo of Ethan, she placed a copy of the verdict. $9.9 million. Permanent revocation of Brennan's badge. Criminal charges pending. The system had worked. Slowly, painfully, imperfectly. But it had worked. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. "Thank you." She stared at it. The anonymous source who'd leaked the footage. Whoever they were, they'd risked everything to make this possible. She typed back, "No, thank you." The response came immediately. He wasn't going to stop. None of them were going to stop him. Someone had to. "Who are you?" A long pause. Then, "Someone who was tired of being scared." The conversation ended there. Claire never found out who sent the footage. Part of her didn't want to know. She made herself dinner, ate alone, watched the news coverage of the verdict, saw Brennan's lawyer announcing they'd appeal, saw the mayor promising reforms, saw activists celebrating outside the courthouse. Tomorrow, Brennan would be arrested. The department would begin the process of being torn apart and rebuilt. The Attorney General's investigation would expand. But tonight, Claire sat in her quiet apartment and thought about a small boy who'd loved trains and dinosaurs and making up songs that didn't rhyme. Justice had been served. It didn't feel like enough. It never would. But somewhere out there, another mother might drive too fast to save her child's life. And when the blue lights appeared, maybe the officer would remember this case, would remember what happened to Derek Brennan, would choose differently. Claire pulled out her laptop and opened her email. Message from Rourke. "Proud of you. Ethan would be too." She typed a response but deleted it, tried again, deleted again. Finally, she just wrote, "Thank you for everything." Then she closed the laptop and walked to Ethan's room. She still hadn't unpacked his things. The boxes sat in the closet, sealed and untouched. She opened one. His stuffed elephant, his favorite books, his dinosaur collection. She took the elephant and brought it to her bedroom, placed it on the pillow next to hers. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Using the settlement money to establish oversight programs, pushing for policy changes, making sure Ethan's death meant something beyond this one verdict. But tonight, she just needed to remember him, not as a case, not as evidence, just as her son. She turned off the light and lay in the dark, holding the worn blue elephant, and for the first time in 5 months, Claire Hartwell slept through the night. 3 weeks later, Derek Brennan was arrested on his front lawn at 6 in the morning. News helicopters captured him being led away in handcuffs while his neighbors watched. The mugshot went viral by noon. His trial was scheduled for the following spring. Conviction looked likely. His attorney was already negotiating a plea deal. But on the morning of his arraignment, something else happened. An envelope arrived at the district attorney's office. Inside was a flash drive containing additional Bodycam footage, not from Brennan, but from other officers in the Meridian Falls Police Department. Footage of stops that had never been reported, of complaints that had been buried, of systematic abuse that went far beyond one corrupt cop. The investigation expanded from Brennan to the entire department. Captain Yates was suspended. Sergeant Mallory was placed on administrative leave. 3 other officers were under investigation. And at the bottom of the envelope was a note, typed and unsigned. "There are more of us who want this fixed. We're done being silent." The police reform that followed took years, but it started with that envelope, with officers willing to betray the blue wall, with people choosing accountability over loyalty. Claire watched it unfold from a distance. She'd moved to a different city, started working at a different hospital, built a new life that didn't revolve around the lawsuit or the trial or the constant reminders of what she'd lost. But she kept in touch with the movement that had grown from her case, attended policy hearings, spoke at conferences about police accountability, used her settlement money to fund legal aid for families fighting similar battles. Ethan's name became synonymous with reform. His death became a rallying point for change. And somewhere in all of that, Claire found something she hadn't expected. Not closure. There was no such thing. But purpose. The ability to turn grief into action. To make sure that 13 minutes of indifference didn't just end one life, but changed thousands more. She would never get her son back, but she could make damn sure no other mother had to watch a cop choose power over compassion while their child died. That was justice. Imperfect, incomplete, insufficient, but it was something. And for now, it was enough. The courtroom in Philadelphia was bigger than the one in Meridian Falls. Federal building, high ceilings, the kind of place designed to make people feel small. Claire sat in the gallery watching Derek Brennan stand before a judge for the 3rd time in 8 months. This wasn't civil court anymore. This was criminal. The charges read aloud: involuntary manslaughter, official misconduct, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering. Each one carried years. Together, they painted a picture of systematic abuse dressed up as police work. Brennan's expensive attorney, the fourth one he'd hired after the others quit, stood beside him looking tired. The plea deal had fallen apart when more evidence surfaced. Now they were facing trial, and everyone in that room knew how it would end. The judge set the trial date for January, 3 months away. Claire watched Brennan's face. Still no remorse. Just that same flat effect, like this was happening to someone else. When court adjourned, she didn't try to leave quickly. Let the reporters find her. Let them ask their questions. Ms. Hartwell, how do you feel about the criminal trial moving forward? She looked directly into the camera. I feel like the system is finally working the way it's supposed to. Slowly, but working. Do you think Officer Brennan will be convicted? I think the evidence speaks for itself. What would you say to other families going through similar situations? Claire paused, chose her words carefully. Document everything. Find people who believe you. Don't stop fighting even when they tell you it's hopeless. Because the system protects itself. But it can be beaten if you're willing to pay the price. What price did you pay? The question landed hard. Claire felt the weight of the past 8 months, the threats, the harassment, the isolation, the nights lying awake reliving those 13 minutes over and over. Everything I had, she said quietly, but I'd do it again. She walked away before they could ask anything else. Outside, Galloway was waiting by her car. You did good in there, the attorney said. I just told the truth. The truth is powerful, especially when people are finally listening. Galloway unlocked the car. I got a call this morning. The state legislature is considering a bill. Mandatory bodycam policies, independent review of police complaints, criminal penalties for evidence destruction. They're calling it Ethan's Law. Claire's throat tightened. They're naming it after him? The sponsor is a representative whose sister went through something similar. Not as extreme, but similar. She saw your case and decided enough was enough. The bill has bipartisan support. It might actually pass. When? Next legislative session. Maybe spring. Galloway studied Claire's face. This is what winning looks like. Not just the verdict. This. Actual change. They drove back toward Claire's new apartment in silence. She'd moved to Harrisburg, far enough from Meridian Falls to feel like a fresh start, close enough to stay involved in the reform efforts. The apartment was small, but hers. No memories attached to the walls. You coming to the sentencing hearing? Galloway asked as they pulled up. Which one? Captain Yates. Next week. He took a plea deal. 5 years for obstruction and conspiracy to tamper with evidence. Claire nodded. I'll be there. You don't have to be. You've done enough. I need to see it through. Galloway didn't argue. The sentencing hearing for Frank Yates happened in the same Meridian Falls courthouse where this had all started. Smaller crowd this time, less media attention. Yates wasn't the main story anymore. Just another corrupt official going down with the ship. Claire sat 3 rows back and watched him stand before the judge. He'd aged since she'd last seen him. Grayer, thinner, the cocky authority replaced by something that looked almost like shame. His attorney made the standard plea for leniency. Family man, decorated career, one mistake in judgment. The prosecutor pushed back hard. This wasn't one mistake. This was years of protecting bad officers, burying complaints, creating a culture where people like Brennan could operate with impunity. The judge sided with the prosecution. 5 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for at least 3. Yates took it without expression. When the bailiff led him away, he glanced back once. His eyes found Claire's. She didn't look away. He disappeared through a side door, and that was that. One more piece of the corrupt system dismantled. Outside, a woman approached Claire. Mid-40s, professional clothes, nervous energy. Ms. Hartwell? I'm Sarah Brennan, Derek's sister. Claire's first instinct was to walk away. She'd spent months fighting this family, watching them circle wagons around a man who didn't deserve protection. But something in Sarah's face stopped her. I need to say something, Sarah continued quickly. I need you to know I'm not here to defend him. I'm not here to ask for anything. I just need to tell you I'm sorry. Claire waited. I knew Derek had problems. I knew he was... Sarah's voice caught. He was different after our dad died. Angrier, more controlling. I heard stories from people in town about traffic stops that went bad, but I didn't want to believe it. I told myself they were exaggerating, that people always complain about cops. I defended him because he's my brother. Why are you telling me this? Because I was wrong. And because watching your son die while Derek sat in his car doing nothing, that's not excusable. That's not a mistake, that's cruelty, and I'm sorry I ever tried to pretend otherwise. Claire studied her face, saw genuine anguish there. What do you want me to do with that? Nothing. I needed you to know that not everyone in his life thinks what he did was okay. Some of us are ashamed. Being ashamed doesn't fix anything. I know, but maybe it's a start. Sarah pulled an envelope from her purse. This is from my mother. She wanted me to give it to you. She's too scared to face you herself. Claire took the envelope but didn't open it. Sarah turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I hope he goes to prison for a long time. I hope he never wears a badge again. And I hope knowing that costs him everything, the way it cost you everything. She walked away before Claire could respond. Claire waited until she was alone in her car to open the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on plain stationery. Ms. Hartwell, I am Derek's mother. I don't expect you to forgive him or me or any of us. I just wanted you to know that I failed as a parent. I raised a son who values power over compassion, who sees people as problems to be controlled instead of human beings deserving respect. I watched him become this person, and I did nothing. I made excuses. I enabled him. Your son deserved better. You deserved better. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover what I feel. I've started volunteering with a police accountability organization. It won't change what happened, but maybe it can prevent the next tragedy. I carry the weight of knowing my son killed yours. I'll carry it until I die. Margaret Brennan. Claire read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. Forgiveness wasn't possible, might never be possible, but acknowledgement was something. The tiniest first step toward a world where people took responsibility instead of hiding behind badges and bureaucracy. She drove home and added the letter to a box she kept in her closet. Evidence of the human cost on all sides. Documentation that this wasn't just good guys versus bad guys, it was broken people in a broken system, and fixing it required everyone to accept their part in how it got broken. November arrived cold and gray. Claire worked long shifts at the hospital, came home to her empty apartment, and tried to build a life that didn't revolve around anger and grief. Some days were easier than others. She'd started seeing a therapist, not the kind who wanted to talk about closure and moving on, but the kind who understood that some wounds don't heal, they just become part of who you are. You're allowed to be angry, the therapist told her during one session. You're allowed to never forgive him. You don't owe anyone peace. Then why do I feel like I'm supposed to let it go? Because people are uncomfortable with justified rage, especially from women. They want you to be sad and dignified and eventually at peace. They don't want you to stay angry because anger demands action. Claire thought about that. I'm tired of being angry. That's different from forgiving. You can put the anger down without saying what happened was okay. How? By choosing what you do with it. You can let it eat you alive, or you can turn it into something that matters. Claire had already started that process. The settlement money had gone into an endowment fund, the Ethan Hartwell Memorial Foundation for Police Accountability. It funded legal aid for families fighting police misconduct, paid for independent investigations, supported victims who couldn't afford attorneys like Galloway. Work helped her set it up, handled the paperwork, the tax filings, the logistics. He'd retired from the military and taken a position teaching at a law school, but he spent his free time working on the foundation. We're getting about 5 applications a week, he told Claire during a meeting in early December. Most of them have merit. We can't fund everyone, but we're making a difference. How many cases have we supported? 17 so far. 3 have resulted in settlements. 1's going to trial next month. The others are still in process. Claire looked at the files spread across the table. Each one represented someone fighting back, someone refusing to accept that authority meant immunity. I want to meet them, she said. The families. I want to know their stories. You sure? Some of these are rough. I'm sure. Over the next month, Claire traveled to 6 different cities, met with families who'd lost loved ones to police violence, excessive force, deliberate indifference. Heard stories that made her own experience feel less isolated and more like part of a pattern that stretched across the country. A father whose daughter died during a mental health crisis when officers used force instead of calling for medical help. A wife whose husband was shot during a no-knock raid on the wrong address. A mother whose teenage son was killed during a traffic stop that escalated over a broken taillight. Each story was different. Each one was the same. People with badges making split-second decisions that destroyed lives. Departments closing ranks. Victims told to accept tragedy and move on. But these families weren't moving on. They were fighting. And the foundation gave them resources to do it. "You're giving us hope," one mother told Claire. "You're showing us it's possible to win." Claire didn't correct her. Didn't say that winning felt hollow when your child was still dead. Because hope mattered. Even small, imperfect hope was better than despair. The criminal trial began in mid-January on a Monday morning so cold that ice formed on the courthouse steps. Claire wore the navy dress again. It had become her armor. This trial was faster than the civil one. The evidence was already established. The verdict felt inevitable. But Brennan's new attorney tried anyway. Painted him as a dedicated officer who made a judgment call under pressure. Argued that the Bodycam footage showed nothing criminal. Just a man doing his job in difficult circumstances. The prosecution dismantled that argument piece by piece. They showed the footage again. Played Brennan's testimony from the civil trial where he'd lied about what he saw, what he knew, what he did. They brought in Dr. Walsh again to explain the timeline, the window of survivability, the way 13 minutes had narrowed the odds from possible to impossible. They called Luis Cordero to testify about department culture, about how complaints were buried, about how everyone knew Brennan was a problem but no one stopped him. And they called Claire. Her testimony was shorter this time. The prosecutor asked her to describe what happened, what she'd lost, what those 13 minutes cost her. She told them about Ethan's laugh, about how he loved building block towers just to knock them down, about how he'd started recognizing letters and was so proud of himself for spelling cat. She told them about the fever that came on so fast, about the vomiting, about the moment his small body went limp in her arms. And she told them about sitting in the car, watching Brennan scroll through his phone, begging silently for him to just let her go. "He had the power to help," she said. "He chose not to use it, and my son paid the price." Brennan's attorney didn't cross-examine. Probably smart. Nothing he could ask would change the impact of her words. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, but Claire sat perfectly still. She'd known this was coming. The evidence was overwhelming. But hearing the word guilty still hit different from expecting it. Sentencing was scheduled for the following week. Claire attended, but she didn't speak. Didn't need to. The prosecutor did it for her. Derek Brennan wore a badge that gave him authority over other people's lives. He used that authority to punish a woman for driving too fast. And in doing so, he killed a 4-year-old child. He then tried to cover up his actions by lying, by destroying evidence, by using the power of his position to silence anyone who questioned him. This wasn't a mistake, this was a choice, and he should face the consequences of that choice. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in state prison, no parole eligibility for 8. Brennan's face finally showed emotion, not remorse, fear. He'd spent 12 years wearing a badge, wielding power over other people. Now he'd spend the next 12 being powerless. The symmetry felt almost too perfect. Claire watched him being led away in handcuffs, orange jumpsuit instead of a uniform, shackles instead of a gun belt. This was what accountability looked like. Outside, the media scrum was massive. National networks, local stations, print reporters, bloggers. Everyone wanted a quote. Galloway stepped up to the microphone first. Professional, measured, victorious. Then she turned to Claire. "Do you want to say anything?" Claire stepped forward. Cameras clicked and flashed. 12 years won't bring my son back, she said. No sentence could. But it sends a message. It tells other officers that the badge doesn't make you untouchable. It tells other families that fighting back is possible. And it tells the system that we're watching. We're done accepting excuses. We're done letting authority hide behind qualified immunity and internal investigations that go nowhere. "Do you consider this justice?" a reporter called out. Claire thought about that. "I consider it the closest thing we're going to get. Real justice would be my son alive." But since I can't have that, I'll settle for a system that holds people accountable when they abuse their power. What's next for you? I keep working. The foundation, the policy changes, making sure Ethan's death wasn't meaningless. She stepped back from the microphone. Let Galloway field the rest of the questions. Rourke was waiting by the car. You did good. I just told the truth. Again. Yeah, but you're getting better at it. Less angry, more powerful. Claire smiled slightly. Therapy's helping. Good, because you've got a speech to give next month. The state legislature. They're voting on Ethan's law. They want me to testify? They want you to tell them why it matters. I said you would. Claire nodded. One more testimony, one more chance to turn grief into change. The legislative hearing happened in late February. The State House was imposing, marble columns, vaulted ceilings, the kind of architecture designed to make citizens feel small and government feel permanent. Claire sat at a witness table facing a panel of legislators. Some looked genuinely interested, others were clearly going through motions. All of them had the power to turn Ethan's law from a proposal into reality. She'd prepared remarks, written and rewritten them with Rourke's help. But when the committee chair asked her to begin, she set the paper aside. My name is Claire Hartwell. 13 months ago, my 4-year-old son died because a police officer chose to write a traffic ticket instead of helping. I'm here because I don't want any other parent to watch their child die, while someone with the power to help decides that power is more important than compassion. She walked them through the timeline, the fever, the drive, the 13 minutes, the hospital, the aftermath. Then she talked about what came after, the civil trial, the criminal trial, the months of fighting a system designed to protect itself. Ethan's law would require independent investigations of police misconduct. It would mandate criminal penalties for evidence destruction. It would create civilian oversight boards with actual authority. None of these things are radical. They're basic accountability measures that should already exist. One legislator, an older man who'd been skeptical throughout, spoke up. Ms. Hartwell, I appreciate your tragedy, but don't these regulations hamstring officers who are already doing a difficult job? Claire met his eyes. Sir, if doing the difficult job of being a police officer is hamstrung by requirements to preserve evidence and submit to independent review when you kill someone, then maybe you shouldn't be a police officer. A few people in the gallery applauded. The committee chair gavelled for silence. The skeptical legislator tried again. I'm just saying we need to be careful not to overcorrect. My son is dead because an officer spent 13 minutes scrolling through his phone. That's not a difficult split-second decision. That's cruelty. And if you think requiring accountability for cruelty is overcorrecting, then I question whether you understand what the correct amount of accountability should be. The room went quiet. Another legislator, a younger woman, leaned forward. Ms. Hartwell, if this bill passes, what impact do you think it will have? I think it will save lives. I think it will force officers to think twice before abusing their authority. And I think it will give families like mine a fighting chance at justice instead of requiring them to spend a year battling a system that protects bad cops more than it protects citizens. Thank you for your testimony. The vote happened 3 weeks later. Ethan's law passed the state Senate 34-16 and the House 112-91. The governor signed it into law on a Thursday afternoon, with Claire standing beside him at the ceremony. Cameras captured the moment, Claire shaking the governor's hand, the signed bill with Ethan's name on it. The small victory that felt enormous because of what it cost. Your son's legacy will be saving lives, the governor said quietly, away from the microphones. Claire nodded but didn't respond. Because Ethan's legacy should have been growing up, going to school, becoming whoever he was meant to be. This was just the consolation prize for a life cut short. But it was something. Spring came slowly to Harrisburg. Claire watched from her apartment window as trees budded and the world came back to life. A year since Ethan died. A year since everything changed. She'd taken the anniversary off work. Spent the morning at Riverside Cemetery where Ethan was buried. The children's section had a new headstone now, black granite with his name, his dates, and a single line. Beloved son. His life demanded justice. His death demanded change. Claire sat on the grass and talked to the headstone like it was him. I won, she said. Brennan's in prison. Yates too. The law passed. The foundation's helping people. We did it. The headstone didn't answer, just reflected clouds moving across the polished surface. I still miss you every day. Every single day, I wake up and for about 3 seconds I forget you're gone. Then I remember and it hurts all over again. A bird landed nearby, hopped around looking for worms. Your teacher called yesterday, Mrs. Patterson. She wanted me to know they named the reading corner after you. Put up a little plaque, Ethan's Corner. Kids go there when they need a quiet space. The bird flew away. Claire stood, brushed grass off her jeans. I'm trying, baby. I'm trying to make it mean something. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm trying. She left flowers, plastic ones that wouldn't wilt. Then she drove back to the city and went to the foundation office. Rourke was there, reviewing applications with 2 law students who'd volunteered to help process cases. How you doing? He asked quietly. Managing. 1 year down. It gets easier. Does it? No, he admitted. But you get stronger, strong enough to carry it. Claire looked at the stack of applications. Each one a story of injustice. Each one a fight waiting to happen. How many can we fund this quarter? With the new donations after the trial, maybe 20, up from 17 last time. Let's make it 25. I'll figure out the money. Claire, I'll figure it out. These people need help. We're going to help them. Rourke studied her face, then nodded. Okay, 25 it is. That evening, Claire got a call from Galloway. You sitting down? Should I be? Brennan's attorney filed an appeal, claiming the trial was prejudiced by media coverage and your victim impact statement was overly emotional and inflammatory. Claire laughed. It came out harsh. Of course he did. It's not going anywhere. The evidence was overwhelming, but it'll take time to process. How much time? Year, maybe 2 before it's fully resolved. So this isn't over. It's never really over, but you won. The appeal is a Hail Mary. It'll fail. After hanging up, Claire sat with that knowledge. Another year or 2 of legal maneuvering, another year or 2 of Brennan trying to escape consequences. She was so tired of fighting, but the alternative was letting him win, and that wasn't an option. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Thank you for what you're doing. My brother died in police custody last year. Your foundation is helping us get justice. We couldn't afford it otherwise. Claire stared at the message. Then she typed back, I'm sorry for your loss. Keep fighting. The response came immediately. We will, because you showed us how. She set the phone down and looked around her apartment. Small, functional, nothing special. But it was hers. A space she'd built after everything fell apart. On the wall, she'd hung a single photograph. Ethan on the swings, laughing, hair wild in the wind, captured in a moment of pure joy before everything went wrong. She looked at that photo every day. Let it remind her why this mattered, not because it brought him back, but because it meant his death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a catalyst. Summer arrived hot and humid. Claire took a week off and drove to the coast, rented a small house near the water where she could hear waves at night. She brought a box of Ethan's things, sat on the beach and went through them slowly. His favorite shirt, a drawing he'd made of their family, 2 stick figures holding hands, a toy car with 1 wheel missing. She'd been saving these, couldn't look at them for months, but now she pulled them out one by one and let herself remember. The memories hurt, but they also reminded her that before the tragedy, there was joy. Ethan had been loved. He'd been happy. His life hadn't just been about how it ended. On the last day of her vacation, she walked into the ocean up to her knees, held the toy car in her hand. For a moment, she considered throwing it, some symbolic gesture of letting go. But she didn't. Instead, she pocketed it and walked back to shore. She wasn't ready to let go, might never be ready. And that was okay. Back in Harrisburg, work continued. The foundation grew. More applications, more cases funded. More families finding the courage to fight back because someone showed them it was possible. In October, Claire was invited to speak at a national conference on police reform. Standing room only crowd. Activists, attorneys, victims' families, even a few police officers who wanted the system fixed from the inside. She told Ethan's story again. Told it without the raw grief that had marked earlier tellings. Just the facts. Just the timeline. Then she talked about what came after. The trials. The verdicts. The law that bore his name. Change is slow, she said. Change is painful. Change requires you to keep fighting even when you're exhausted and broken and everyone tells you it's impossible. But change happens. I've seen it. My son died, and from that death came legislation that will protect other children. That's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's something. During the Q&A, someone asked if she'd forgiven Brennan. No, Claire said simply, and I don't plan to. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stay angry at the thing that deserves your anger and use that anger to build something better. After the speech, people lined up to talk to her, share their stories, ask for advice, thank her for giving them hope. A young woman, maybe 25, waited until the end. My name is Rachel Torres. Robert Torres was my father. You helped fund his case against the cop who assaulted him. Claire remembered. How did that turn out? Settlement? Not huge, but enough to cover his medical bills and make the department admit wrongdoing. He wanted me to tell you, thank you. He would have come himself, but he's not doing well health-wise. I'm glad we could help. Rachel hesitated. Can I ask you something? How do you keep going? How do you fight this hard without it destroying you? Claire thought about that. I don't know that it hasn't destroyed parts of me, but the parts that are left, they're stronger, harder, more determined. I keep going because stopping would mean Ethan died for nothing, and I can't accept that. Do you think we'll ever fix the system? I think we'll make it better, little by little, case by case. We'll force accountability where there was none. We'll empower people to fight back. We'll create consequences for abuse of power. Will it be perfect? No. But it'll be better than what we have now, and better is worth fighting for. Rachel nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. As winter approached again, Claire marked the milestones. 18 months since Ethan died. 1 year since Brennan's conviction. 6 months since Ethan's law went into effect. The foundation had funded 63 cases. 12 had resulted in settlements or verdicts. 42 were still pending. 9 had been dismissed, but even those had forced departments to take complaints seriously. The law had prompted over 200 investigations into police misconduct. 30 officers had been disciplined or fired. 5 faced criminal charges. It wasn't everything, but it was progress. On the anniversary of the verdict, 1 year since the jury said guilty, Claire visited Meridian Falls for the first time since the trial. The town looked the same, like same streets, same buildings, same ordinary life, continuing as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. The police department had been gutted and rebuilt. New chief, new training protocols, new oversight board with actual authority. Claire drove past the spot where Brennan had pulled her over. Highway 54, just outside town. Someone had placed a small memorial there. Flowers and a handwritten sign that said, Ethan's Mile, drive safe. She didn't know who'd put it there. Didn't matter. She pulled over and got out. Stood on the shoulder where her car had been that night. The road looked different in daylight, less ominous. Just asphalt and painted lines. But when she closed her eyes, she was back there, sitting in the driver's seat, watching Brennan walk away, feeling helpless while Ethan struggled to breathe. I did it, she said aloud. I made him pay. I changed the system. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the highway. I love you. I miss you. And I'm going to keep fighting in your name until I can't fight anymore. She got back in her car and drove away. 2 years after Ethan's death, the foundation had become Claire's full-time work. She'd left the hospital, dedicated herself completely to helping other families fight back. The work was exhausting. Each case was a fresh reminder of how broken the system was. But it was also rewarding in ways she hadn't expected. Seeing a mother win a settlement after years of being told her son's death was justified. Watching an officer face criminal charges because a victim had resources to fight. Reading articles about policy changes inspired by Ethan's law spreading to other states. Every small victory was a piece of justice claimed back from a system that hoarded it. Claire still saw the therapist weekly, still had bad days where the grief overwhelmed everything else, still woke up sometimes reaching for a child who wasn't there. But she also had good days. Days where the work felt meaningful, days where she could laugh without guilt, days where she remembered Ethan with joy instead of just pain. The anger never fully disappeared, but it evolved, became focused, became productive. She learned to carry it without letting it carry her. In the spring, 3 years after everything began, Claire got a call from the warden at the facility where Brennan was incarcerated. "He's requested a meeting with you, says he wants to apologize." Claire's first instinct was to refuse. She didn't need his apology, didn't want to see his face, but curiosity won out. "When?" "Whenever you're ready. He's not going anywhere." She thought about it for a week before deciding. Then she drove 3 hours to the prison and went through security and sat in a visitation room waiting. Brennan walked in wearing prison blues. He'd lost weight, looked older. The swagger was gone completely. They sat across from each other, separated by a table. A guard stood nearby. Brennan spoke first. "Thank you for coming." Claire said nothing. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." "Why now? Why not 2 years ago? Why not the night it happened?" "Because I didn't think I was wrong. I thought I was just doing my job. I thought you were overreacting, and I had the authority to make you wait." He looked down at his hands. "I was wrong. I was cruel. And your son died because of it." "Yes, he did. I can't take it back. I can't fix it. I can't even ask you to forgive me because I know that's not possible. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. And I'm sorry." Claire studied his face, saw genuine remorse there. Finally, "Do you know what the worst part is?" she said quietly. "It's not that you made a mistake. It's that you had so many chances to choose differently. When I first told you Ethan was sick, you could have let me go. When you saw him in the back seat, you could have called an ambulance. When I begged you to hurry, you could have written the ticket faster. But every single time you chose power over compassion, and that choice killed my son." Brennan's eyes were wet. "I know. You don't. You can't. Because your son didn't die. You're sitting in prison feeling sorry for yourself, but you still have a life ahead of you. Ethan doesn't. He was 4 years old, and he died scared and in pain because you couldn't be bothered to show basic human decency." "I know. I'm sorry." "Stop saying that. Sorry doesn't matter. Sorry doesn't bring him back. Sorry is just a word you're using to make yourself feel better." Brennan wiped his eyes. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can say that would make this okay." Claire stood. "I came here because I wanted to see if you changed, if prison had taught you anything. And maybe it has. Maybe you really do understand what you did. But it doesn't change anything. You're still the man who killed my son, and I'm still the mother who had to bury him because of you." She walked toward the door. "Ms. Hartwell?" She turned back. "Your foundation, the work you're doing, it matters. For what it's worth, it matters." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "It doesn't make up for what you did, but at least something good came from it." She left without saying goodbye. Outside, she sat in her car and breathed. That conversation had taken more out of her than she'd expected, but it was closure of a sort. Not forgiveness, not peace, just the knowledge that Brennan finally understood the weight of what he'd done. It would have to be enough. Years passed. The foundation grew. Ethan's law expanded to 6 more states. Claire became a recognized voice in police reform, traveling the country, testifying at hearings, helping families navigate the system that had tried to destroy her. She never remarried, never had another child. Some losses were too big to fill with replacements, but she built a life around purpose, around making sure Ethan's death counted for something. And slowly, year by year, the system changed. Not everywhere, not perfectly, but enough that when another mother faced blue lights while her child was dying, she had laws protecting her, resources supporting her, a path to justice that didn't require destroying herself to walk. That was Ethan's legacy, not the death, the change that came after. On the 5th anniversary of his death, Claire stood before a crowd at the Foundation's annual fundraiser. Hundreds of people who'd been helped, who'd helped others, who'd joined the fight for accountability. "My son died because one person with power chose cruelty over compassion," she said. "But from that cruelty came thousands of people choosing to fight back, choosing to demand better, choosing to hold the powerful accountable. That's not a consolation prize. That's revolution. Small, slow, unglamorous revolution that happens one case at a time." The crowd applauded. "I miss Ethan every day. I'll miss him until the day I die. But I'm proud of what his life and his death have meant. I'm proud of the system we're building. I'm proud of every single person in this room who refused to accept injustice as inevitable." She raised her glass. "To Ethan, and to every person who's ever fought back against a system that told them they were powerless. You're not. We're not. And together, we're changing the world." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Claire smiled. It was real this time, not forced, not performative. Real. Because this, all of this, was what winning looked like when winning was possible. Not perfect, not painless, not even fully satisfying, but meaningful. And in a world that had tried to take everything from her, meaning was enough. She'd lost her son. She'd fought the system. She'd won battles and lost others. She'd turned grief into purpose and rage into change. And if another mother somewhere was driving too fast to save her child's life, and the officer who stopped her chose compassion instead of cruelty, if that happened even once because of what Claire had built, then it was worth it. All of it. Every painful step. Worth it.